The tiny head, covered in dirty blonde curls, rolled across the wooden basement floor, leaving a trail of crimson. The small body it had once been attached to stood motionless, fangless, for what seemed an eternity. Dale closed his eyes and rubbed his brow hard, but not hard enough to wash the scene from his mind's eye. It had been days since he'd been in that basement, making heads roll, but the images were not fading. Not this time. Now, hundreds of miles away, Dale opened his eyes, still not believing where he stood. Why the hell did Earl want to meet here? He scanned the street. What he saw made Dale wish he had a cigarette. He didn't smoke, not in years. He just had the desire to blow smoke in people's faces. Not regular folk, just the uptight, narcissistic, well-to-do high society types that passed him on the street. Each one gave Dale that "what are you doing here" glare, followed by a cursed dismissal and an upthrust chin. But what did he expect standing on the sidewalk in Brentwood, an upscale neighborhood in Los Angeles, filled with trendy shops, chic eateries, and exotic cafes, and not a decent cheeseburger for miles? It was the kind of place that put Dale in a mood, if he hadn't already been in one. Earl best have a good reason for dragging me out here on a Saturday. He had been leaning on the wall outside a boutique that sold, well, Dale didn't know what they sold, but one of the women that worked there, with hair of an unidentifiable color and enough makeup to shroud her true complexion in mystery, asked him not to stand in front of their window. She even offered him 5 whole American dollars to move. So, 10 feet east of his previous position, and $5 richer, Dale folded his arms and tried to disappear in the shadow of an overhang. His face sported what Earl called Dale's sourpuss expression: weathered, worn, tired, and yes, moody. Dale didn't feel up to whatever the hell Earl had in mind, but he had been unable to come up with a good excuse to get out of it. Besides, he hadn't seen his friend in a week, and he hoped that when they finished with whatever they were doing here, they'd find a suitable watering hole and get a beer. Or 2. He didn't know how much he should tell Earl about his long, tense, exhausting trip. He didn't like including him when the council was involved. He preferred to keep his friend as far away from those assholes as possible. But going down south alone was getting more and more dangerous, where it seemed to be all fang and no religion. At least not any religion Jesus would own up to. With council resources, Dale had spent the last few days cleaning out a nest east of Shreveport. Dark, nasty, fouler than a room full of afterbirth. But that wasn't the worst of it. Not by a long shot. They were kids. Goddamn kids. Dale had always believed that the bloodsuckers didn't sire kids, or maybe Dale just wanted to believe it. Wanted to believe that there was some honor amongst monsters. Some rules that they played by. But not anymore. Not after what he'd seen. Not after what he'd had to do. Earl not being there was the right move. His stomach was large, but it wasn't made of the stuff required to do what needed to be done. The Native American tribe that adopted and raised Earl had given him the name White Shadow. It wasn't a light-headed comment on his weight, but rather an endorsement of what the tribal elders had noticed about his character. Earl had the propensity to protect anyone smaller than himself, anyone that fell inside his shadow. Even at age 11, Earl protected kids, standing up to bullies, even adults. He'd never stand by while a kid was being hurt, and he definitely didn't have what it took to take the head of a child, even if it just looked like a child. It would break him. But Dale could handle it. At least that is what he told himself. He closed his eyes again as the image of two young boys floating above the floorboards, their long toenails scraping the wood, clawed hands outstretched as they charged, filled his mind. In his unescapable memory, he lifted the machete and... Screeching tires ripped Dale from the past and his eyes popped open. A cherry red Mercedes-Benz backed into a handicap spot at the curb. Dale glanced at the license. No handicap sticker. A 20-something male, dressed like James Spader from Pretty in Pink, threw open the door. He stood up, perfectly abled, on his patent leather loafers and undid the snaps on his driving gloves. He paused dramatically as if someone was taking his picture. "Hey," Dale said. "You know you're in a handicap spot?" The young man, all of 160 pounds, said, It's fine. I'm not staying long." He removed his gloves. "My mom lost both her legs overseas to a landmine." Confusion swept over the man's face. "I beg your pardon?" "Serving her country. Our country," Dale said. "And she never could understand why an able-bodied person like yourself would take a space that she so desperately needed." The man smiled and stepped up onto the sidewalk. "Well, that is a sad story. But don't worry, there's no disabled veterans in Brentwood, for God's sake." The man casually patted Dale on the shoulder. "They only have these spaces because of some silly law, I'm sure. It's an inconvenience, really." An image of Dale's fist connecting just under the man's jaw flashed through his mind. A fountain of teeth and blood flew upward. The young man fell back, coming down on the trunk of his cherry-red Benz. Then his limp, bloodied body slid to the asphalt. Dale unclenched his jaw and grinned. "Now you have yourself a great day," the man said, and gave Dale a double-finger gun salute. Dale took a deep breath and let it out slow. Very slow. Lately, he'd been trying really hard to stay relaxed, trying to maintain his calm, focus on his blood pressure, not kill every asshole he meets. It was a work in progress, an uphill battle sometimes, but he was working on it. Earl was convinced that if Dale could learn to relax more, it might make him a better person. The only problem with that reasoning is that Dale didn't want to be a better person. Not in the least. The reasoning from his doctor during his last physical, however, did make an impression. A big one. "Lower your blood pressure or you will have a stroke before you're 50, he'd said, after looking at Dale's blood workup. Dale felt healthier and meaner than ever. But the blood pressure and cholesterol medicine he'd just been put on told a different story. "Hey, walking ugly," Earl said from a few yards away. Dale grinned at the sight of his friend, who was dressed nicer than usual. No ball cap. His jeans didn't appear to have any holes, and the shirt, well... Wow. That shirt. It had a collar. The buttons were buttoned. Properly. And it looked to have been ironed. Not recently, but surely sometime in the past year. "Why you dressed for Sunday service?" "I'm not." Earl gave Dale a quick once-over, who wore his usual jeans, t-shirt, and a leather vest. "My God, you look like 10 miles of bad road. You even own a mirror? I told you to dress nice." "Thought you were joking." "Why would I joke about that?" Earl said. "Oh, hell, Dale, I've broken appliances on my porch that listen better than you." "We ain't seen each other in a week. Is it necessary to begin with insults?" "Ain't necessary. Just enjoyable is all," Earl said, then held his arms wide. "Would you rather have a welcome-back hug?" "Oh, hell no." Dale chuckled and stepped away from the wall. "It's good to see you, old man." Earl smiled. Back at you, ugly. So, why the hell are we in this 7-figure income bracket of a neighborhood? It's a little surprise. Earl reached for the door just to the right of Dale, opened it, and gestured inside. Age before beauty. You're older than me. Yeah, but I'm prettier. Cautious and more than a little curious, Dale peeked inside. He gazed into a large lobby with chairs along the wall, padded with high backs. They reminded Dale of barber chairs, but much less utilitarian. A marble table stood in the middle with a centerpiece feature that was part gazebo, part rainforest, and part Egyptian obelisk. Water drizzled down the bronze sides, splashing into exotic ferns, then disappeared beneath an elaborate base. Dale looked back at Earl with a raised eyebrow. Go on in, Earl said. Dale didn't move. What's wrong? Earl said. You scared? Dale looked back at Earl. You think you can manipulate me that easy? Heck no. I got all kinds of respect for you. Earl held the door a little wider. Buck, buck, buck. You're juvenile, Dale glowered, then added, Nobody really likes you. Earl chuckled. Everybody likes me. Then, not gently, Earl pushed Dale forward. Dale's boots echoed on the polished marble tile as he followed Earl toward an elegantly polished concrete desk, decorated in what the artist thought was Native American petroglyphs. Most of them were, but as they neared, Dale noted that the artist had mixed traditions, united markings from different regions, and even continents. On the wall behind the desk was a marquee that read in 2-foot-tall letters, all capitals, Serendipity. Before Dale could ask where the hell they were, a young man, thin, dressed in earth tones, wearing something that wasn't shorts or pants and, well, not really a skirt, but something that sort of encompassed all 3 of those garments, appeared next to them. Greetings, my new friends, the young man said. Welcome to Serendipity. My name is Herb. How may I serve you today? Earl stepped forward. Called the other day about that certificate I won. A smile so big it almost touched both of his ears grew aggressively on Herb's face. Yes, of course. You must be Earl. I recognize the burly voice. He reached out as if to touch Earl's shoulder, but it fell short, and he just swished his hand through the air, like someone about to do a magic trick. Then he turned to Dale. Oh, this must be the friend you mentioned? Herb looked Dale up and down. Yes, I see what you mean, Earl. He waved his hands in front of Dale. There is a lot of tension here. You don't know the half of it, Herb, Earl said. Again, my name is Herb. He reached over and grabbed several pieces of tan papers and held them out. Why don't you look over these menus and decide what we will be doing today? I can personally recommend the Pacific Ocean Seaweed Full Body Polish. It is an exfoliation experience that fights aging and dehydration while smoothing out those. He zigzagged his fingers, a bit like Zorro, in front of Dale's face. Uneven textures. Dale didn't understand a thing Herb, or Herb, had just said. Hoping to reduce his confusion, he looked down at the menu printed on papyrus. The word Serendipity ran across the top, and just underneath it, it said, A day spa from the ancients in the modern world. Dale looked up at Earl. No. Earl nodded. Yes. No, Dale insisted. Sometimes I think your brain is rattling around up there like a baby in a boxcar. Earl smiled at Herb. Herb. It is pronounced Herb. Yeah, sorry. Can you maybe give me just a minute with my friend? Herb waved his hands. Of course. That would be no problem whatsoever. I'll tell you what. While you decide what you want, I'll order up a couple of lemongrass mojitos. They ought to die for. Well, that sounds delightful, Earl said. An Arab whooshed away. Dale said, in the parade of bad ideas, this has to be your grand marshal. What are you thinking? Well, I'm thinking that a month ago my best friend came to me after seeing his doctor and asked me to help find some relaxing activities because if he didn't reduce his blood pressure, his head was gonna pop off. I meant like getting a beer, going fishing, deer hunting, human trafficker killing. You know, fun stuff. Just give this place a try. Day spa is one of the most relaxing, rejuvenating, life-affirming experiences you can give yourself. Whose tree-hugging ass did you pull that from? It's on the brochure. Dale rolled his eyes. Look, while you were off the radar last week, Candy and I went to a fundraiser for the Humane Society. We did the silent auction thing and won this couple sessions at this place. Last day it's good as today, and Candy had already made plans to go see her boy. So, instead of letting this go to waste, I thought we'd do you and your blood pressure a favor and give it a go. Humane Society, huh? Yeah, Candy has a thing for dogs. He's always rescuing strays. That explains her interest in you. Hilarious, Earl said. It's all paid for. Ain't gonna cost you nothing, which is right in your price range, you colossal cheapskate. I'm not cheap, Earl scoffed. You squeeze a quarter so tight you can hear the eagle scream. Dale tried not to, but he chuckled. What do you say? Earl said. Couple of stress-free hours, no hitting or killing nothing, no unnecessary brooding, an entire afternoon dedicated to relaxing. We call it a mini vacation from me and you. I can't put my finger on it, Dale said, but there's an insult in there somewhere. Yeah, probably. Earl put a hand on Dale's shoulder. Come on, man. For your health. Dale took a deep breath. He'd never say it out loud, but from the moment he'd stepped inside Serendipity, a wave of calm had been washing over him. Maybe it was the decor. Something about the water rolling down the strange rainforest obelisk feature, or maybe it was the oxygenated air that beckoned him. But whatever it was, it had a soothing effect. But it wasn't the calming atmosphere trying to convince him to stay. That came from a darker place. If I stay, I don't want there to be a lot of strangers' hands on me, Dale said. Earl nodded. I am aware of your touching policy. I will ask Herb to recommend activities that are low on the human contact side. Although it might do you some good to be slightly more touchable than a cactus covered in porcupines. But you do you, good buddy. Does that mean we're staying? Dale looked past Earl as a tall man entered the lobby from the street. The angles on his square jaw were only sharper on his tight haircut. A navy blue blazer not only covered a muscular body, but did a piss-poor job of concealing the fact that he was armed. Yeah, Dale said, giving in to the familiar sensation, the one that always reached out from the dark. Sometimes coming to him in a dream, but more and more in the wake of day. An unmistakable feeling that he had arrived at a place he needed to be. We're staying. Wow, Earl said. Well, thought that'd be a lot harder. What can I say? You're as persuasive as a future father-in-law with a shotgun. Earl raised an eyebrow. There's an insult in there somewhere. Probably. Earl clapped his hands together. Okay, you go pop a squat, and I'll go talk to Herb.
This episode of Horror Hill is proudly brought to you by NordVPN. Data. We've all got it. In many ways, it makes us who we are. It's a precious thing, a bit like a soul, bound to our impure flesh by so many ones and zeros. But how do you hold on to it? Everyone wants it. Crime syndicates, big box stores, tech bros. Your data's helpless. It can't protect itself. It's out there floating around on the internet, like some fat American tourist in a lazy river pool, sucking down pina coladas that he put on the company card. That pathetic waste of space can't protect himself. Your data needs you, which is why you need NordVPN. NordVPN is the shotgun mounted above your data's pillow, the .357 Magnum in your data's nightstand, and the well-trained pit bull snoring at the foot of your data's bed. If anonymous internet browsing and super-fast connections are your thing, you came to the right place. But we're just getting started. Did you also know that you can unlock Netflix, Hulu, BBC, and many more of your favorite entertainment websites with NordVPN? That's right. NordVPN hosts more than 5,500 servers in 60 countries, allowing users to access super-fast web browsing around the world. So wherever you go or live, NordVPN's got your shit locked down. And maybe you like to play games. I like to play games. Oh, but that game isn't available in your country. No problem. Just change your virtual location and buy it. Yeah, it's that simple. Give it a week, and you'll be unblocking those geo-restricted servers so hard they won't sit comfortably for months. Are you digging this so far? I bet you are. In no time at all, you'll be making a splash, building a reputation. Everyone in town's going to be gunning for you and your data. But they won't find it. Because the greatest trick NordVPN ever pulled was convincing the world your data doesn't exist. It's easy to use. Connect with one click or enable auto-click for zero-click protection. It's got 6 whole devices covered, and it's on every major platform from Windows to Mac OS to Linux to iOS to Android. So stop living in fear and show those digital parasites that you don't give a fuck. All you gotta do is go to nordvpn.com/horrorhill or use code HORRORHILL to get a 2-year plan plus a bonus gift for a huge discount. That's NordVPN, NORDVPN.com/horrorhill. Thank you for your support of this program and of the sponsors that make it possible.
As Earl stepped over to the desk, Dale moved toward the chairs along the wall, keeping a vigilant eye on the man now moving about the perimeter of the lobby. He knew what the man was doing, had seen it many times before. This is what private security doing advanced recon, securing the area for some muckety-muck, probably already en route, looked like. Dale had dealt with the type before, from those long disbanded Blackwater assholes in the Gulf to the much more dangerous Lochnar in Eastern Europe. Never hard to spot. They were always more bravado than stealth. Dale glanced over at Earl, who talked to Arab like they were old pals. Dale was a bit jealous of Earl's ability to make friends with people he had nothing in common with. He took a deep breath, tried to remember why they were here. Relax, he told himself as he eyed the shoulder holster just visible under the man's jacket. Looked like a Glock 17, possible 4th generation. Before he could stop himself, Dale ran the stats through his mind. Semi-automatic, standard mag holds 17 9mm, most likely non-standard with at least one backup. Could hold up to 22, polymer frame, metal barrel, and slide. Fixed polymer combat style sights. Dale closed his eyes and took a deep breath. Well, relax, you jackass, he scolded himself. Jesus, I'm wound tighter than a $2 watch. Well, we're all set, Earl said, strolling back. We're going to start off with a sauna, then get a hot rock massage, and follow it up with a healing session of Reiki. Earl sat down. It's all easy on the touching, and supposes to tune up our chakras. Not entirely sure what that is, but it do sound relaxing. Dale leaned back, folded his arms. I'm sure it will be, he said, maintaining a steady glare at the security pro canvassing the lobby. Serendipity, Earl said, still holding the menu. What is that exactly? Dale rubbed his chin. They're like happy accidents, sort of when things happen by chance or without intention and they end up being uplifting or beneficial in some way. Kind of like karma? Dale shook his head. No, same ballpark, different game. Earl snapped his fingers. Like last year, you broke down in Barstow, remember? I come to get you, and we bumped into that shithead who'd been hunting the working ladies at the Two Chokes. You remember? Yeah, but what? After we put him down, I found that unopened case of Kentucky Straight bourbon in his cab. Now that was some serendipity. Dale chuckled. No, that's just stealing from a dead asshole. Earl folded his arms. Well, I was certainly uplifted. The security man exchanged a few words with Erb at his desk. Erb nodded several times, and Dale got the sense that their host felt unnerved. Erb reached under his desk, fiddled with something, then picked up his iPad and held it against his chest. Defensively. If Dale had to make a guess, he'd say that Erb had just switched off the security cameras. The man with the square jaw turned away from Erb suddenly and moved toward the front door. He paused, slightly looking over in Dale and Earl's direction. Dale knew they were being sized up. Dale and Earl looked about as out of place as a couple of debutantes in a trailer park, and Dale could sense the man calculating, processing the risk factor the two rednecks posed. He gave the square-jawed man his best go-fuck-yourself glare over a contradictory have-a-nice-day smile. In the blink of an eye, Square-Jaw decided that the two large yokels were not a threat and continued to the door. Hey, looky here. Earl pointed to the papyrus menu. Says they have a lava rock you can rub on your elbows to make them smooth. Why would grown men need smooth elbows? Don't know. Just sounds nice, Earl said. You know, it ain't necessary for you to toss dog crap on everything. Sorry. Force of habit. Like most of your habits, it ain't doing your blood pressure no favors, Earl said. Speaking of bad habits, you speak to your ex-wife. Dale sighed. Not in a spell. Trying to lower my blood pressure, not have an aneurysm. You need to find a less irritable woman. I swear that ex of yours could start an argument in an empty house. I find her eccentricities charming. Earl shook his head. She's done slid off that woman's cracker a long time ago. Can we steer clear of my love life? Fine, Earl said. You want to tell me what you were up to last week? The question brought an image into Dale's mind. A pile of severed heads. The heads of children, burnt to a crisp and smoldering in a church basement. Not especially. Or council business? Leave it be, Earl. Fine. You keep your damn secrets, Earl said, sounding a little hurt. There's something I'd like to talk to you about anyhow, if you have a minute. My ass and ears ain't going nowheres. Gentlemen, Erb said, strolling over. I think we're ready for you now. Dale took a deep breath as he stood. Erb's face lit up. Oh, Dale, your vest is brilliant. Do tell me the designer. Harley Davidson. Oh, I am not familiar with Mr. Davidson's work, but I shall Google him immediately. Dale smiled. Hey, Erb, you expecting some big shot company or something? The light seemed to fade from Erb's face. Yes, State Senator Kavanaugh will be stopping by for a few hours. Erb turned and gestured for them to follow. He moved back to the front desk where 2 lemongrass mojitos were waiting. He scooped them up and handed them to Earl and Dale. You will love these. Organic and gluten-free. Dale nodded. That's always a concern of mine. Earl shot Dale a disapproving glare that very clearly said, "Be nice." "Anything to worry about?" Dale said. "Absolutely not, gentlemen. It's just you seemed a little anxious when his security man was here. You okay?" Dale brought the mint-flavored straw to his mouth but couldn't convince himself to take a sip. Arab brought his hands together in front of himself, almost in prayer. "Thank you for asking. I am well." He lowered his voice. "Senator Kavanaugh is not my favorite client." "Oh." Arab leaned closer. "He is a little handsy with the staff. There have been complaints."
"Well," Earl said, "just bounce his prissy-ass grabbing butt out of here next time."
Arab took a deep breath. "Wish that I could. Seriously. But his family owns this building and most of the block, really. He is our landlord."
"I'm sorry to hear that. Must put a lot of pressure on you,"
Dale said. "It is manageable," Arab said. "But this will not dampen your day. I promise you, Dale, when you leave Serendipity, you will be more relaxed than you have ever been before. How are those mojitos?"
"I can honestly say it's like nothing I ever tasted,"
Earl said. "Excellent." Arab spun on a heel and glided toward a rounded staircase. His strides were elegant, each step more graceful than the last. He approached the stairs and his garment swayed in dramatic, choreographed motions, giving him the allure of a glamorous starlet from the 1940s. Even the light seemed to hit him in the most flattering way. He gestured up the stairs. "Gentlemen, walk this way." Earl and Dale couldn't walk that way to save their lives, but they could follow, and that's what they did. Up the stairs and onto the second floor, which was decorated as serenely as the lobby. Artificial but realistic candlelight illuminated vegetation that seemed to be rooted in the walls. Artwork depicting natural settings felt very staged, but, to Dale's mind, relaxing. Arab gestured to another small waiting area. "Willow will be with you in a moment. Please do enjoy the mojitos, and I will see you after." Looking very relaxed, I'm sure. Dale and Earl took seats. An all-female staff, as many as 8, wearing soft pink polo shirts with the Serenity logo in the pocket, moved about their business. When one would pass by, they'd throw Dale and Earl a smile, and with each one, Dale felt a little more at ease. Earl took a sip of his mojito and said,
"Are you going to try that, or are you just going to move it from hand to hand like a hot potato?"
Dale would kill for a beer right now. Didn't even have to be a good one. He brought the straw up to his lips and took a whiff.
"Smells like it was poured into this glass via someone's unwashed ass crack."
Earl sighed and removed the straw from his mouth.
"Well, that paints your picture. Thank you for that."
He set his drink down on a table where it would remain.
"Kavanaugh,"
Earl said.
"I don't follow politics much, but I've heard of him. Can't remember what for, though."
Dale folded his arms. "You might be remembering the abductions."
"Could you tickle my memory a bit?"
"About 5 or 6 years ago, 2 of Kavanaugh's kids, youngest I think, girl and a boy, both not quite 10, got snatched from their private school."
"Oh, yeah."
Earl's expression dulled as the dark details were clearly flooding back.
"Yeah, that was awful. Never found them kids, did they?"
Dale shook his head. FBI played it like a kidnapping. Wealthy family held for ransom. They went by the numbers, but they'd had more luck finding a chicken with teeth than finding them kids.
"Jesus, I hate it when the dark touches little ones,"
Earl said. "I know you do," Dale said.
Kavanaugh got elected to the state legislature the next year. They lost his kids, then went on campaign trail. We all grieve in our own way, I guess. Think he's the minority leader in the state senate now, or some such. Changing the subject,
Earl said.
I wanted to talk to you about something. Been thinking about this for a while now.
Before Earl could get any more out, Arab came back up the stairs with a man of Asian descent right on his heels. The man was well dressed, jacket, no tie, and an unusually robust black mustache. As they arrived on the second floor, his brown eyes moved from side to side, scanning the area. Dale figured that the honorable state senator had arrived, and the well-dressed mustache was securing the floor. The security man followed Arab down the hall and into the room to the right. Before they came back out, Kavanaugh's entourage moved up the stairs. The man that Dale recognized, Kavanaugh, led the small pack. Not a good-looking man. Receding hairline, comb-over hair to hide the receding hairline, pointy cheekbones, and a lipless smile that only a mother would kiss voluntarily. Following close behind Kavanaugh were a few more members of the security detail. The square-jawed one Dale had seen earlier, and a tall, thin man, at least a foot taller than the others. The thin one had deceptively broad shoulders and wore his suit loosely, casting the illusion that he was thicker than he really was. The last one up the stairs was bald, and scarcely noticeable white eyebrows and black eyes. Dale thought they might have been colored contacts, but he couldn't imagine anyone choosing to have black pupils. Of course, he couldn't imagine why grown men wore man buns, shaved their pubic hair, or bleached their asshole. So clearly, the world wasn't restricted to the limited confines of his imagination. When Kavanaugh stepped up onto the floor, he glanced at Earl and Dale, and for a split second, Dale thought the man might come over and offer to shake their hands. Some sort of politician's reflex, campaigning autopilot that steered him toward potential new votes. But in the blink of an eye, Kavanaugh dismissed the two large bumpkins as nobodies, not worth a moment of his time, and he turned to move down the hallway. Earl leaned over to Dale.
Well, he's got all the warmth of a penguin's nutsack.
Dale smiled. In the hall, an employee carrying a stack of towels tried not to make eye contact with the senator, clearly wanting to avoid notice. She failed. "Hey, sweetie," Kavanaugh said to the employee, who abruptly stopped. He moved closer to her. "Will you be taking care of me today?" No. I'm off in a few minutes." She continued walking. "Well, that's too bad," Kavanaugh said, as he turned to watch her walk away, his lipless grin curling up his right cheek. When he finished staring at her ass, he happened to look Dale's way. Dale locked gazes with the man and gave him a hard stare, the one he reserved for those that were approaching the line. Kavanaugh's worm-like grin squirmed up the other side of his face as if to say, "What are you going to do about it?"
"Steady,"
Earl whispered.
"Today is about relaxation."
"Well, I'm as chill as an igloo," Dale said. Kavanaugh turned away and moved down the hall where Arab stood in the doorway. Dale tried but couldn't take his eyes off him. There was something wrong with the man. Or, more to the point, the weight of him. Dale couldn't quite put his finger on it, but it was as if his shadow didn't fit the man's body. The darkness that trailed him was more than just his shadow. The senator gave Arab a little shove before stepping into his room. Dale watched until he was out of sight, and then felt the hair on the back of his neck stand up as Kavanaugh's shadow took an unnaturally long time to follow. A snake's tail lingering behind. Raised voices grabbed Dale's attention. On the other side of the floor, several of the staff were arguing. Dale couldn't discern the details, but he could guess. None of the employees smiled anymore when they passed by. Their strides were stiff, uncomfortable. Dale glanced at Earl to see if he'd noted the change in tension since Kavanaugh's arrival, and was surprised to see a stupid grin on his face. When Dale realized that Earl was looking at Kavanaugh's security detail, all lingering in the hall deciding what position to take, he deduced the source of Earl's amusement. "You're giving him nicknames, ain't you?" Earl chuckled. "How'd you know?" "Your juvenile amusements have been well established," Dale said. "What you got so far?"
We'll see the one with the square haircut and right angles for the jaw? That there's Blockhead. Reminds me of the bad guys in Gumby."
Dale chuckled. "Very nice."
"And the frolicky challenge one's Cue Ball."
"Well, naturally."
"Tall one's Beanstalk."
"Classy. I like it."
"And the Asian fella's Jackie Chan."
No, Dale said.
"Well, why not?"
"Well, for one, that's not a nickname, it's just appropriation of someone else's name. And two, it's sort of racist." "Oh, damn. You're right." Earl brought a hand to his chin.
"How about wonton?"
"No."
"Egg roll?"
"No," Dale repeated. "Get off Chinese food."
"Well, how about sushi?"
"Earl!"
"Well, it's not Chinese,"
Earl countered, then rubbed his belly.
"Damn. Now I'm hungry."
"Oh, Jesus." Dale shook his head.
"Well, okay, you think of one."
The security men broke apart in the hall, and the one still needing a nickname headed their way. Dale was impressed at the size of the man's facial hair. Thick, well-groomed, and reminded him of something you'd see in a stag film from a different era. Dale leaned over toward Earl and whispered, "How about porn stash?" Earl let loose with laughter, then tried to swallow it as porn stash approached. The mustache-endowed man took a position at the top of the stairs, and Dale tried to identify the weapon inside his jacket. Before he could, a petite gal with a warm smile said, "Morning, gentlemen. My name is Willow, and I'll be taking care of you." Her shoulder-length, peach-colored hair twirled a bit as she held out a hand, gesturing to the hall. "Would you follow me?" They stood, and as they moved toward the hall, Dale glanced over at Pornstash one last time, trying to get a look at his weapon. The slight bulge in his jacket didn't seem to fit any handgun outline Dale sorted through in his mind. Then he thought, no, it couldn't be. No. It could be. Nunchucks. Who the hell carries nunchucks? "So y'all," Willow said over her shoulder while leading them down the hall. You two gentlemen are going to start with the sauna." She stopped at the door, opened it, and gestured inside. "This'll be your treatment room." As Dale stepped in, he noted that their room was next to Kavanaugh's. The one Earl had dubbed Blockhead stood outside the door. "There's some towels inside," Willow said. "I'll give you gentlemen a few minutes to disrobe and put those on." Earl paused in the doorway and lowered his voice.
"Do we leave our skivvies on?"
Willow lowered her voice. "However you are most comfortable, sir." "I'm most comfortable in a bar, preferably with poor lighting and pool table in the back," Dale said.
"Dale,"
Earl snapped and pushed him aside.
"You will have to excuse my friend. First time at a spa."
Willow smiled and kept her hushed tone. "It'll be our little secret." Earl shuffled inside and picked up a towel. It fell open, soft, thick, but a tad on the small side. Earl said, and patted his belly.
"I'm gonna need a Velcro 4 or 5 of these together."
Willow smiled, stepped to an all-white wardrobe, and opened the double doors. "We got you sir." She gestured inside and added, "Bigger towels and robes are in here." Dale raised an eyebrow suspiciously at Willow, sensing that she had a secret. Earl turned to Dale.
"So, what's it gonna be?" You keeping on them BVDs or you doing the full Monty?
Part 2. The smell of rich cedar in the sauna brought Dale back to when he was a boy, no more than 12, hunting in the Smoky Mountains in Tennessee with just a bolt-action .22 and a terrible tracking hound named Buck for company. That dog couldn't find a dead skunk if he'd been standing on it, but there never was a finer friend, or more loyal. Not till Earl, anyway. For the moment, Dale had forgotten the horrors of last week and just about everything else that was itching him in hard-to-reach places. His muscles and joints were feeling the kind of relaxation only a bottle of top-shelf whiskey could bring. He had the urge to tell Earl right then and there what a great idea this was. But heaping praise and gratitude upon one another wasn't really the cornerstone of their relationship. Besides, Earl was breathing kind of funny. "You all right?" Dale said. "You sound like a Peterbilt going uphill."
Leave my...
Earl took a deep breath.
"Truck alone. Oh, Jesus. It's hotter than two rats fucking in a wool sock in here."
Dale ran a towel over his head. "Why don't you step out? Ain't no shame in it."
"I'm no candy ass. I can hang as long as you can,"
Earl said.
How long we gonna be in here? Like a half hour?"
Dale smiled. "Oh, about 10 minutes.
"Oh, Jesus, I'm gonna die."
"Just step out, old man," Dale said. "I'll catch up with you."
"Fine,"
Earl said, slowly getting to his feet. He wobbled a bit, a mountain off balance, and braced himself on the wall.
"I'll be right outside."
As Earl moved to the door, it opened abruptly. The security man, Cue-Ball, stuck his hairless head inside. Dale felt his black eyes looking them over. He also felt his calm wither.
Excuse me,"
Earl said, hoisting up his towel. Cue-Ball stood in the doorway, blocking Earl's exit. Earl looked back at Dale with a shrug, then back at Cue-Ball. The security man slowly stepped from the doorway to let Earl pass. The pace at which he did this sent the very clear message: I'm getting out of the way because I want to, not because you want me to. Jesus, Dale thought, gazing upward. Just one asshole-free day. Is that too much to ask? After Earl stepped out, Cue-Ball reappeared. How about you? How about me what? Dale said. You gonna be much longer? I'll be as long as I need to be, Dale said, stretching back onto the hot strips of cedar. Cue-Ball's eyes narrowed. Maybe there was some other activity you could try now. Dale had a go fuck yourself and the blind, deaf, dumb mule you rode in on, all loaded in the chamber and ready to fire. But before he did, the senator stepped into the sauna. That's all right, he said, putting a hand on Cue-Ball's shoulder. He stepped inside and took a seat. Dale expected him to remove his robe, but it remained on as he leaned back onto a cedar bench. Dale hadn't spent a whole lot of time in saunas, occasionally steam room, but he was pretty sure that wearing a robe inside was odd. He did feel the need to inquire, but that would break the unwritten rule most men followed. No eye contact or meaningless chit-chat with strangers in elevators, public restrooms, and any other place other males were in various stages of undress. Instead, Dale leaned back and breathed in the warm, wet air, trying to relax, or at least look relaxed in the presence of someone he'd much rather put through a window. Sweat trickled down his face, and he kept his eyes shut. Silent minutes passed, and without Earl's constant talking and belabored breathing, his mind started to wander. It didn't take long for it to wander to a church basement a few miles outside of Shreveport, and the images, never far from Dale's memory, began to rotate like a slideshow. 2 kids, a boy and a girl, dirty blonde hair, clawing their way up a basement wall, dried blood under their nails. They hissed through tiny fangs, just big enough to see in their young mouths. He swung his weapon, cutting true. Cutting. Dale's eyes opened and he sat up fast. Sweat stung the corners of his eyes and he breathed in. The hot air didn't feel good anymore. He glanced over at the senator, who merely raised an eyebrow. Dale wiped the sweat from his head and tossed the towel on the bench. He sensed it landed kind of funny, and he turned to look to make sure he hit the bench. A chill moved over him. The towel had landed across the toes of a child. Its feet were dirty and bare, standing on the very bench he was sitting. Dale turned slowly, looking up. The child, skin gaunt, clothes threadbare, peered down. Dried blood covered the lower half of its face, and as its lips parted, small, ivory fangs emerged. "Hot enough for you?" Kavanaugh said. His voice made Dale jump, as he had forgotten the man was even there. He turned to the senator, whose lipless grin looked like two dead worms smashed together. "You don't look so good," Kavanaugh said. Dale turned back to where the child stood, but now found his towel laying on the bench, touching only hot cedar. He reached over, grabbed it, and wiped his face. "Jesus, I'm losing my goddamn mind." In the past few days, his nightmares had become daymares, images flashing in his mind almost every time he closed his eyes. Now, it seemed he no longer needed to shut his eyes. The ghosts from last week were just going to materialize whenever they goddamn pleased. Dale stood and stepped to the exit. He pulled the door open and paused in the doorway, glancing back. The dead, fanged child was back, sitting next to Kavanaugh. The grains in the cedar were just visible through its translucent form, now leaning its head on Kavanaugh. At the senator's feet was another child, maybe female, it was hard to tell. It curled into a ball, knees to chest. The clothes were torn to shreds, head nearly bald, save for several hellish strands, twisted and greasy. Burnt scalp peeled away from bone, some of it touching Kavanaugh's toes. The man, still in his robe, didn't seem to notice. "Can you shut the door?" Kavanaugh said. "You are letting all the darkness out." "What?" Dale said. "The heat," Kavanaugh repeated, pointing at the door. "You are letting all the heat out." "Yeah, right. Sorry." Dale stumbled back and let go of the door, letting it shut slowly. "Fuck me," he mouthed softly. Earl, extra-large robe cinched up, stood by a water cooler, holding a full glass. "Hey Dale, looky here," he said. "They got water with pieces of fruit in it. I don't know if it's on purpose, but it sure do taste." Dale turned to face Earl. "What's wrong?" Earl said, taking a step toward Dale. "You all look like Spider's ghost just crawled up your ass." Dale wanted very much to come clean and say, "I'm seeing things, and now hearing things, and oh yeah, the remnants of the 13 vampire kids I chopped up and set on fire might have followed me back from Louisiana. Either that, or I'm nuttier than a porta potty at a peanut festival." Dale wiped his face with the towel, then suddenly remembered what it had been touching a few moments ago, and tossed it to the floor. "Hey, there's a towel been right there," Earl pointed. "Just 'cause you are a redneck don't mean you got to act like one." Dale grabbed his robe off a hook. You see anything odd since we've been here?" He tightened up his robe and walked past Earl. How odd?" Earl said.
Like a chicken soup sandwich odd, or you and me at a day spa odd?
Dale grimaced.
Let's just get this done,
he said, moving past Earl. Earl stepped in line behind him.
That is not a very relaxing mindset you got there.
When they got back to the room, they laid face down on the tables and waited for Willow to start the next phase of their day spa treatments. Earl had left the door open, and Dale had a nice view into the hall as Kavanaugh passed by, heading back to his room, robe cinched up to the neck. And right behind him, weighing down the man's shadow, were the two children from the sauna. The clarity of the forms didn't fill out as before, but Dale's recall filled in the missing details in the dark, child-sized silhouettes. Why is this happening? Dale had been haunted before, but not like this. Not so vividly.
Is it usual for a state congressman, or what did you call him?
Earl said, pulling Dale from his thoughts.
What? Kavanaugh, what'd you say he was?
Minority Senate leader.
Yeah, one of them. Is it normal for one of them to have 1, 2, 3, 4 bodyguards?
Dale had wondered that too, but with the images of dead kids using his head as their own personal amusement park, he hadn't put very much thought into it.
Can't say,
Dale said.
Maybe what happened to his family created some justifiable paranoia. Yeah, I guess a loss like that can do things to you.
There was a knock at the door, and without waiting for a response, Willow stepped in.
Are we all ready?
Ready as I'm gonna get,
Dale said. Willow stepped over to Earl's table first, and Dale tilted his head to watch. She removed a towel from a medium-sized tray, revealing a pile of glistening stones piled inside a granite bowl. Using a pair of tongs, Willow retrieved a rock from the bowl and began placing them on Earl's back. Every time a stone touched Earl's skin, he made a yummy sound, like the one he makes when he's biting into a chili dog.
I'm happier than a dead pig in the sunshine. Dale, you're gonna love this.
Dale remained skeptical. Before Willow placed the final rock on Earl, he asked her a question. You're not from here, are you? She paused and stiffened, and her voice became measured.
Yes, I am. I live just over the hill in Encino.
Yeah, but that's not where your parents and kin are,
Earl said. Don't put the girl on the spot, Dale said, having suspected the same thing.
I'm guessing Alabama,
Earl said. Willow slumped.
Close. Smyrna, Georgia. Please don't tell nobody.
Well, your secret's safe with us,
Earl said.
Thank you,
she said, her voice sounding natural.
First month out here, I couldn't get a job to save my life. You interview with a southern accent and everyone thinks you're stupid and raised in a trailer park.
As Earl and Willow continued chit-chatting, Dale heard voices through the wall, slightly raised, but nothing alarming. Sounded like Kavanaugh was living up to Erb's assessment. When there was a break in the conversation, which revolved around Willow trying to follow in Julia Roberts' Hollywood footsteps, also from Smyrna, Georgia, Earl asked,
So, does the big shot senator always travel with bodyguards?
Willow stepped over to Dale and placed a warm stone on his shoulder blade.
I don't know about everywhere, but he's always had him when he comes here.
Must be scared of you then,
Dale said. Willow laughed.
I suspect not.
She placed another stone, and then another. The hot rock seemed to melt into Dale's spine. They absorbed his tension like a sponge. Warmth moved down his length, a soothing, tropical wave. Parts of his body he didn't even know he'd clenched were unclenching. He felt calm, calmer than he'd been in years. And it was, well, unsettling.
So, how long have you two been together?
Willow asked. Dale groaned. Earl laughed, then said,
Oh, I don't know. How long would you say it's been, Buttercup?
We are not together, Dale said, his calm audibly dissipating.
There's no judgment here at Serendipity.
Earl chuckled enough that a few of his rocks fell out of place.
No, he said. Me and Grumpaluffagus over there are not a couple. We're here to work on his blood pressure and a few other of his irritable qualities.
Dale felt Willow's hand on his back as she placed the last rock.
That is one nice friend you got there.
Dale tried not to smile. Yeah, he's a real peach.
Now I need to visit some of our other guests.
She gestured to a small stereo.
Would you like to listen to some music?
Got any Johnny Cash?
Earl said. Willow smiled big, showing teeth.
Back at my apartment. But here we have like Yanni, John Tesh, Enya. Honestly, I'd rather listen to fingernails than a chalkboard.
Silence will be fine, Dale said.
Good choice. Back in a bit.
Willow stepped out, closing the door behind her. Earl didn't allow any silence.
So, like I started to say,
Earl began,
there's something I've been meaning to ask you for a while now.
Dale took a deep breath and tried not to let Earl's voice disturb his calm.
What? Well, we've been riding the same roads for a while now, and been off and on business associates to our mutual benefit. Wouldn't you agree?
Are you referring to the trucking or the extracurriculars?
Well, both. Trucking mostly. The hell beast wrestling is just plain fun.
There was a thud next door, as if something had been knocked to the floor. A woman's voice, barely audible, sounded,
I will. Again.
Stop. Dale could detect irritation in the woman's voice, but not panic. From what he could tell, she was handling her business best she could, in a difficult situation.
So, what I want to ask you is,
Earl said,
how's about we make our partnership a little more official? Just because it's legal now doesn't mean I'm going to marry you, sweetie. I was under the impression you didn't like jokes of that nature about our relationship.
No, I just don't like it when you do it.
Okay, you jackass,
Earl said.
Serious now. I want us to formalize this partnership, create a company, Earl and Dale Trucking, or E&D Trucking.
What's wrong with Dale and Earl Trucking?
Well, I was just thinking it should be alphabetical.
You idiot. That is, something hit the wall, hard. Dale imagined one of the rolling carts sliding across the floor and smashing into a wall. There were now several women yelling,
I don't care who you are, you keep your hands to yourself.
Dale's calm was departing like Baptists leaving service on Super Bowl Sunday.
I even designed a logo.
Earl reached around for his pocket, but slapped nothing but towel.
And when I get near my britches, I'll show you.
I'll think it's a fine idea, Dale said, and I will give it some thought under one condition.
Which is?
That if you tell the story of when you asked me to go into business with you, you say we were in a proper bar, had a pitcher of beer, shots of whiskey, and watched football.
Okay,
Earl said.
Who's playing?
LSU and Ole Miss, and it went into overtime. Earl chuckled.
Fine. You'll think on it?
I said I would. The door slammed so hard it shook the walls, and Dale distinctly heard crying. A woman crying. Shit. Dale rolled over and sat up, the rock sliding off his back. You hearing this? Earl sighed. Yeah. He swiveled his head to look at Dale.
You're gonna go over there and cause a ruckus, ain't you?
Dale reached for his pants. Huh, you can tell?
You got your ruckus face on. I knows all your faces.
Dale stepped into his pants. That is both sweet and unsettling. Earl sat up, rocks hitting the floor.
Okay, before you go and destroy a perfectly good day, Spa, can I just ask you to consider that maybe this place can handle its business? They don't need a big redneck smashing up the joint to help some ladies. That, in this day and age, probably won't appreciate our kind help anyhow.
A shout came from the other side of the wall, and Dale definitely heard the word, "No!" It sounded like Willow. "Think that's our young peach getting squeezed."
Well, she is a Johnny Cash fan from Georgia. The senator might have bit off more than he can chew,"
Earl said. Dale gave his friend a hard stare. "Earl, what if that was one of your nieces over there?" Earl threw his head back.
"Oh, God damn it. What did you have to go and say that for? Now I got to go over there and cause a ruckus too. Shit."
Dale felt the thrill of blood-boiling tension. It coursed through him like cocaine through an adrenaline junkie. "Get your pants on, old man." It took near 90 seconds for Earl to get dressed, save for one sock. Holding his unworn sock open, he bent down and scooped up 5 of the stones and placed them inside. He then tied a knot, sealing up the open end. Dale had retrieved a stone as well. He cradled it in his right hand. A little thick for skipping, but it felt warm and soothing. On any given day, Dale's fist could feel like a brick to the face, but with a large stone nestled under his fingers, it would feel like a sledgehammer to the skull. Earl met Dale at the door. He glanced back at the serene little room they were leaving and sighed.
"Oh, I really did hope this would be good for you, Dale."
"I know you did, buddy." Dale met his friend's gaze. "And I do appreciate it. Really, I do. Now, let's go hit something." A shrill scream boomed from the hallway. Dale pulled the door open. Willow, her shirt torn, stepped from the room next door and dashed down the hall. Scanning the scene, he noticed that Pornstash stood behind them in the little waiting room at the stairs in the rear guard position, his gaze cast down the staircase. The one Earl called Blockhead stood outside Kavanaugh's door about 6 feet away. No sign of cue ball and beanstalk, and Dale surmised that they were inside with the honorable statesman. "You go deal with Pornstash," Dale said. "Then you come catch up with me."
"Roger Dodger."
Earl stepped into the hall and moved toward the small waiting area. Dale lingered to see how well Earl handled Mr. Numchucks, but he felt Blockhead's eyes on him, so he turned to face him. Dale used his body to obstruct Blockhead's view into the waiting area, and the 2 men just eyed one another. Behind Dale, sounds of scuffle began, the details of which were loud enough to vaguely describe what was happening. A man grunted. A weapon whipped fast through the air, striking flesh. Dale winced a little, thinking he probably should have mentioned the nunchucks to Earl. A good friend surely would have. There was another, deeper groan, then the sound of someone smashing through a piece of furniture. This got Blockhead's notice, and Dale smiled wide, trying to keep the big man in his place. Dale could see the debate in his eyes. Should he help his co-worker, or should he maintain his post? Dale chose to make the decision for him. As nonchalantly as the 250-pound redneck in an upscale day spa could, Dale strolled toward the security man outside Kavanaugh's door. Blockhead narrowed his gaze, understanding Dale's intention. When close enough, he placed a hand on Dale's shoulder. "Why don't you just mind your own business?" Dale smiled wider than he knew how, even showed some teeth. Blockhead had already made 2 mistakes. The first, putting a hand on Dale. The second, and only slightly more important mistake, had to do with how the man had his weapon holstered, grip laying across his chest. It was clear that the hand on Dale's shoulder was the one he used to draw his weapon. Big mistake.
This episode of Horror Hill is proudly brought to you by HelloFresh. Some of you may not know this about me, but I'm actually something of a recovering garbage belly. Yeah, I had to break some pretty unhealthy eating habits. As a kid, I had an issue with Sprite addiction. Now, you heard right. Sprite. That sticky, lemon-limey sugar water that basically came out of the faucets in the 90s. Soon as no one was looking, I'd grab one of those big 2-liter jobs and just chug it. Chug it until either I vomited or I felt very ill. Yep, it was kind of like playing Russian roulette with diabetes and tooth decay. From there, I slowly worked my way up to the calamari wars. That is double orders of fried calamari. Wasn't all my fault. Back then, we still thought carbs were good. As one would expect, my appetites followed me all the way to freshman year of college, where my weekly study sessions quickly devolved into me consuming an entire pizza to myself, all the while smoking an entire pack of cigarettes and washing it all down with an entire 12-pack of Coors Light. Now, I know what you're thinking. Did he just say Coors Light? Ugh. Well, just simmer down, kids. We didn't have as many options back then. And also, kids, while we're talking here, don't smoke cigarettes. And don't drink Coors Light, though you don't need me to tell you that. You've got your parents for that. Alright, moving on. Well, as you can probably guess, it was only a matter of time before fate intervened, and an unpleasant GI condition precluded me from all the things I liked, like Southwestern egg rolls, or Korean tacos, or, Jamaican jerk pizza, what have you. I'll say I did lose weight quickly after that, although the side effects of all that Coors Light did do a number on my skin's elasticity. Now it all just hangs there, like fleshy pajamas, sallow and jaundiced, like some wrinkly, earthbound sugar glider, just waiting for that right gust of wind. It was time to turn my life around. What I needed was some kind of meal service, something that would help cut out the stressfulness of meal planning and grocery store trips, keep me away from the takeout, you know? Something I could generally whip together in 30 minutes or less. Something with high-quality fresh ingredients, sourced directly from growers and delivered from the farm right to my front door in under a week. Contact-free, of course, with everything individually apportioned. Because let's face it, measuring stuff, it's not for me. That's when I discovered HelloFresh. Oh yeah. HelloFresh! Damn! Talk about variety. HelloFresh offers 50 menu and market items each week, including ready-to-eat salads, sandwiches, and soups. And after they partnered with Green Chef, that's even more variety. HelloFresh is 28% cheaper than shopping at your local grocery store. It is 72% cheaper than a restaurant meal, and no quality is sacrificed. Touch particular, are you? Well, HelloFresh offers the flexibility you need to easily customize your order on the app within minutes. Easily change your delivery day. This is delivered, by the way, if I didn't mention it. Yep, they bring you all the ingredients, you bring it in your kitchen, you cook it, eat it, it's good. Food preferences, plan size, or you can just skip a week whenever you need. It has changed my life. Those buffalo spiced crispy chicken cutlets? Mwah. Yum. And it really impressed my date that night, too. I don't know if this is too much information, but I got lucky with HelloFresh. And you can too. All you got to do is go to hellofresh.com/14hill and use code 14hill for up to 14 free meals plus free shipping. Pretty good deal, right? Yep. Here it is again. Go to hellofresh.com/14hill and use code 14hill for up to 14 meals plus free shipping. It's America's #1 meal kit, baby. Now, bandwagons aren't usually my thing, but this one? I think you should jump on it. Thank you for your support of this program and of the sponsors that make it possible.
Normally, as a matter of honor and respect for his opponent, Dale waited until his adversary made the first aggressive move. But any man who would stand by as another man mistreated a lady had no honor, and certainly didn't deserve Dale's respect. As quick as lightning to a rod, Dale's arm shot upward and wrapped up the man's outstretched limb. Dale locked the man's elbow and held his wrist inside his armpit. In a simultaneous action, Dale brought up his right fist, cradling a warm stone. Connecting under the jaw, the man's head snapped back like a Pez dispenser. Dale pulled Blockhead toward him as he followed through with his blow, trying to avoid the back of the man's head hitting the door. No need to alert Cue-Ball and Beanstalk about what was happening in the hall. As Dale pulled him away from the door, still holding his gun hand tightly, he noticed the other hand making an attempt at his sidearm. With Blockhead's oversized physique, the effort was awkward and clearly not going to work, like a fat man trying to wash his back. But Dale admired the man's die-hard spirit. To their right was a shelf hook about waist-high in the wall, displaying a tiny Keebler elf-sized Zen garden. It was beautiful and serene, and Dale smashed the man's head right into it. Blockhead's mouth hit the edge of the nook with a horrific crack. As the man slid against the wall, legs folding back, Dale noticed several teeth laying on the tiny shelf. He picked up the marble-sized molars and looked at the tiny Zen garden, now slightly askew. He straightened it, then took a moment to carefully place the teeth in the sand, making sure to arrange them in a manner that complemented the natural flow of the peaceful pattern. He stepped back and admired his work, feeling very, very zen. Dale bent over the body, part of which was propped up by the wall, making it look like he still had some fight in him. He checked the man's pulse, found it, then pushed the rest of him onto the floor. Retrieving the man's sidearm, Dale removed the ammo and dropped it and the clip in a vase. When he turned back around, Earl was heading his way. In the distance, Dale could see a pair of legs sprawled out on the ground behind him. Earl wiped his lip, smearing blood on his chin. "Did he get one in?" Dale said.
Sure as hell did. Dang fool with nunchucks. Who the hell carries nunchucks? The world ain't a kung fu movie.
"You shouldn't be so critical," Dale said. "You brought sock filled with rocks." Earl smiled, then slapped the weapon he'd learned to make as a kid into his hand. A stone that apparently had been working its way through a hole during the fight slipped out and tumbled to the floor.
Damn, I needs new socks.
Dale chuckled.
That's about as hillbilly as it gets.
"Gentlemen, please,"
Arab said, coming down the hall.
"Please stop."
Dale moved past Arab, heading for Kavanaugh's door.
Well, we just want to have a conversation with the man. Express our opinion on how one should treat a lady. Then we'll get out of your hair.
Arab gestured to the bodies on the floor.
"Like you did with them?"
Well, they were rude, Dale said.
Earl wiped his lip.
Awful rude.
Arab opened his mouth to protest, but a blood-curdling scream boomed from inside the room. Earl looked at Arab. "What do you say, Herb?" Arab looked flustered, then nodded. "Okay. Kick his ass." Dale pushed the door wide open. He only had a split second to take in the room. Twice the size of the one he'd been in, it had a tinted window, large enough to put a piano through, facing the street. Cue-Ball stood on the far side of the room, close to the window. His right hand held the wrist of a staff member, her shirt violently untucked, and a palpable look of terror on her face. Kavanaugh, wearing only a towel, secured her other wrist, and in his free hand held a small blade. But it wasn't the dainty knife that struck Dale like a hammer. It was the burned brand mark in the center of Kavanaugh's chest that gave Dale a near-fatal, momentary pause. Beanstalk, a good 1.5 feet taller than Dale, came at him from the side. Dale saw the muzzle of the Colt close-quarter battle pistol moving toward his head. Dale hunkered low and moved into Beanstalk. Due to the man's stature, it didn't take much effort to come underneath it. Dale grasped his gun hand and redirected the muzzle toward the ceiling just as he fired. The bullet disappeared into the ceiling. Dale wanted to relieve the man of the pistol before he got off another shot, but Beanstalk's grip was ironclad. Using both hands, Dale forced the pistol down and toward the window. While punching Dale in the gut, Beanstalk fired 2 more times, sending both shots through the glass. The window didn't shatter, but a white web of cracks spun from the center outward. When the first shot rang out, Kavanaugh released the staff member, as did Cue Ball. She ran screaming from the room, and Kavanaugh tried to follow. He dropped his blade onto the massage table and tucked in behind her. Earl moved into his path, and the frail, near-naked man bounced off Earl's belly, landing under the cracked window. And that's when Dale saw them again. The kids, or remnants of the kids, were in the room as well. They stayed close to Kavanaugh, who didn't seem to notice. As the wheels started to turn in his head, Beanstalk's fist connected with Dale's chest. Even wincing in pain, an image from last week flashed in his mind. The faces of the two kids were screaming at him, fangs bared, as Dale removed their heads. Why the hell were they haunting him here? And why just the two of them? He'd put down a dozen of the creatures in that church basement. Trying to put the pieces together while fighting with a gun-wielding giant was not yielding the desired results. His chest ached, and his back muscles felt as if they were fighting uphill. Dale decided to focus on the physical. He drove the pistol back into the man's lean gut, and if he had a mind to pull the trigger, he'd shoot himself in the stomach. The realization flashed over Beanstalk's face, and Dale took his momentary indecision to pry two of his fingers from the grip. With an upward twist, Dale snapped them like twigs. Beanstalk dropped the gun and took another swing at Dale's gut, but missed. Dale wanted to follow up the finger snapping with a headbutt, but he'd need stilts for that. He kicked the pistol under the massage table as Beanstalk went into his jacket with his good hand. Dale figured it was a knife, and probably in no way dainty like the one Kavanaugh brought. Dale reached back onto the massage table, grasping the little blade that Kavanaugh had been only moments away from abusing a staff member with. As his finger grasped the handle, he caught sight of Earl, rock in hand, releasing a well-wound-up pitch. The rock hit Cue Ball's forehead so hard that he dropped like a battleship anchor. "Cue Ball in the corner pocket," Earl called out. Beanstalk fumbled in his jacket, making it obvious that the hand he used wasn't his good hand. This gave Dale a second to reach back further and get a hold of Kavanaugh's abandoned weapon. As his fingers enveloped the handle, he knew immediately that something was wrong. Dale held the object in front of his face. Oh shit. Not a knife. Not a dainty knife. Not any kind of knife. Kavanaugh had brought a chrome dildo, fashioned to look like a knife. Jesus, what a sleazeball. Dale turned back to Beanstalk just in time to see that the NBA-sized bodyguard had not brought a dildo, but a K-Bar Marine issue 7-inch straight-edge blade. It didn't take a weapons expert to conclude that in a knife fight, a K-Bar beats a dildo every goddamn time. He raised his forearm to fend off the attack from up on high. The blade cut deep into the underside of his arm, and Dale felt it hit the bone. Not waiting for Beanstalk to open up his arm with a twist or a downward slash, Dale bulldozed forward and seized the forearm of Beanstalk's knife hand. Holding it firm, he pushed him back against the wall and lashed out with the only weapon in his hand. He thrusted the dildo like a blade into the man's open mouth. Beanstalk made gargled choking sounds as Dale pushed it forward. At some point, a button had been depressed and a soft hum floated up from the tiny device as it started to vibrate. Dale thrust a knee upward, hard. Unfortunately, his target was too high, and he missed by a foot. Feeling the K-bar scraping his ulna, Dale decided it was time to phone a friend. "Earl!" Cue Ball was trying to get up. Earl kicked him hard in the face, then yelled over his shoulder, "What? Can you give me a hand with Slender Man here?" Earl turned around. "Who?" "Earl!" Earl took 2 quick steps toward Beanstalk and swung the sock at his outside knee. There was a sickening crack, and Beanstalk shrieked in pain, then started to fall. "Timber!" Earl cried. For good measure, Dale smashed him in the face as he fell. The tree of a man hit the floor hard, his branches spreading out like scattered driftwood.
Hey,
Earl said.
don't go doing that.
What?
Changing nicknames in the middle of a fight.
Earl said.
It's confusing.
I'm sorry. Dale grabbed the vibrating dildo out of Beanstalk's throat. He didn't want the man to choke while unconscious. Good or bad, no man wants their mama to know that's how they went out. Choked to death by a novelty dildo. Kavanaugh suddenly got to his feet and dashed for the door. Earl reached across the table and grabbed what remained of his hair and yanked him back. He called out in pain as Earl pulled him over the table. He fell over the other side but remained on his feet. The two revenants moved toward Kavanaugh, the girl sitting down by his ankles. They both looked up at Dale, eyes trying to deliver a message. One he finally received. "Oh shit," Dale said. "I'm so stupid." Earl looked confused.
Not that I disagree, but why are you stupid?
"They're not haunting me." Dale threw the dildo at Kavanaugh's chest. "They're haunting this pile of shit." Dale spun on his boot heel in frustration, then reached for a hand towel. He wrapped it around his wounded forearm. Surprisingly, there wasn't much blood, and Dale knew that was a good sign. He bent down and scooped up the K-bar from Beanstalk's unconscious grip.
Not at all sure what my friend is talking about,
Earl said, turning on Kavanaugh.
but I'd like to talk to you about how to treat a lady. No means no, asshole. Wait, you got no family learning?
"Forget that," Dale said, pushing Kavanaugh up against the massage table. He took the K-bar and put the tip into the brand on his chest. "I want to know about this, and where they are." Kavanaugh looked perplexed. You know what this mark means?" He looked Dale up and down, and even in his less than advantageous position, managed to sound superior. "You? I know all about that ancient glory hole of fangs," Dale said. Kavanaugh's brow hardened. "Then you know how fucked you are." "Not as fucked as you, if you don't start talking." Dale pushed the knife in. Kavanaugh squealed, and a thin stream of blood fell from his chest. "Whoa." Earl clasped his hand on Dale's knife hand, pulling the blade away from Kavanaugh's flesh.
Look, we came to protect the ladies and teach them cretins what happens when you disrespect a woman. Now, I think they've...
Dale wrenched his hand free. "It ain't about that no more." "Well, enlighten me." Kavanaugh chortled like a schoolgirl with a secret. Dale thrust the knife down, stabbing the massage table, missing Kavanaugh by an inch. He then jabbed his index finger at the now bloodied brand.
See that?
Earl eyed the mark, burned deep into Kavanaugh's chest. About the size of a silver dollar, the details on its lower half were obscured by crimson, but above, the etching was clear. The top of an Egyptian ankh, rising up from something. "It's not to my taste," Earl said. "But what's it mean?" "It's the flesh talisman. It means he's loyal to them. And they are loyal to me," Kavanaugh added. "Loyal to who?" Earl said. "An ancient coterie of bloodsuckers that's known for cultivating powerful humans." Dale scowled at Kavanaugh. "Or humans seeking power." Ancient coterie, what?" Earl muttered. "I never heard of them." "It's old news," Dale said. "Ben Franklin and the other founding fathers chased them all the way back to Europe. Last eyes on them had them hunkered down in hidey holes throughout Mesopotamia." Earl muttered. Where?" Kavanaugh's sick, worm-like grin returned. "Oh, you have no idea what is coming." Dale actually had a pretty good idea, but Earl wasn't grasping the situation. He hadn't had the benefit of Dale's training. The disillusionment of knowing and seeing way too much. Dale needed his friend to catch up, or at least get a taste of what they were dealing with. "You know how a human can earn this mark," Dale said, pointing at the flesh talisman. Earl shrugged. "It's earned by showing their undying loyalty and commitment. A human wanting this mark makes an offering," Dale said. "An offering of children." Earl's face turned pale. His features dropped like stones. "And those aspiring to demonstrate their unbound devotion, attaining the highest level of allegiance, they offer their own children. He let them feed on his own flesh and blood," Earl said, his voice stunned. Dale glared at Kavanaugh and thumped his chest. "They can feed on them, bleed them for fun, or even sicker. They can turn them." "No," Earl mouthed. "They don't do that." "Oh yeah. Ask me how I know," Dale said. "Because they did turn them. Then, for whatever reason, they dumped them in Louisiana, where they started hunting and turning other kids. Over a dozen by the time I got there." Dale took a step back. "There was a preacher, a good man. He thought they were just sick, so he hid them in the church basement, not knowing what they were. The kids fed on their parents and the entire congregation. They turned a little town into hell on earth." Dale thrust a finger at Kavanaugh's face. "And it's all because of this mangy piece of demon fuck!" Kavanaugh sat up, looking emboldened. "Those were my kids to do with what I want." He spit in Dale's face. "You had no business interfering. They were stepping stones to my greater glory." It took everything Dale had not to gut the man right then and there, but he knew he was worth more alive than dead. Kavanaugh had been sleeping with the enemy. He knew where they were. Dale wiped the saliva from his cheek, then looked over at his friend to see how he was taking it, and immediately knew something was wrong. Earl's pale expression changed to one of pure rage. It was a face he hadn't really seen before. Not like this. "Earl?" Before Dale could stop him, Earl's right hand slapped across Kavanaugh's throat. Dale reached for Earl's wrist, but his friend was already on the move. Earl lifted the politician off the floor by the neck and screamed, "Your own children!" He took 3 fast leaping steps. "Earl, no!" Earl grunted as he shot-putted the man through the window. Broken glass crashed all around, nearly drowning out the sounds of Kavanaugh's screams. The screaming stopped suddenly with a loud thud, followed by a car alarm. Dale stepped over to the window. Kavanaugh had sailed clear over the sidewalk and landed, not at all gently, on a familiar cherry-red Mercedes. Earl had been an all-state shot-putter in high school, and Dale had always admired the skill he demonstrated when tossing folks. Dale said, staring down. Earl backed from the window. "Oh, damn. What did I just do?" "Well, you easily scored a 10 for distance. That's for damn sure."
"Gentlemen, where is the senator?"
Arab said, standing in the doorway. Earl pointed out the window. Arab sashayed over and peered down.
"Oh, my, oh my, is he dead?"
Dale leaned out the window a bit and took a hard look. "Nah, he's still breathing." Kavanaugh moaned and tried to sit up on the car roof that now had a massive dent the shape of his ass. He slumped back, beginning to sob. "Oh, Jesus, what's wrong with me?" Earl muttered, his hand shaking. A small crowd began to gather, including the 20-something James Spader lookalike, running up from a nearby shop. He yelled something and grabbed handfuls of his own hair in frustration. "Now that right there," Dale chuckled. "That is some serendipity." "I don't
don't know what the hell came over me,
Earl said. Still looking out the window, Dale reached back and put a hand on Earl's shoulder. Your heart was in the right place.
Don't look like Kavanaugh's leg is, though. That is definitely broke. Jesus, I'm going to jail.
Don't fret, Earl. It's not the first time you've tossed an asshole out a window.
Well, I know, but that was my first senator.
Dale chuckled. Guess you're moving up in the world, confronting a higher class of asshole. Earl turned on Dale.
You're making jokes, but I don't think this is funny. This is serious.
It is serious, Dale said calmly, but not the kind of serious you're thinking. The law is not what we need to worry about.
Well, what then?
Dale tried to think of an answer that would be quick and satisfy, but none came. He turned away from the window and his eyes fell on the two remnants of Kavanaugh's children. They stood side by side, no longer in tattered clothes, no more burnt flesh. They looked like they did the day they disappeared. Clean private school uniforms, freshly washed skin, and immaculately arranged hair, the hallmark of a doting mother.
Hey, Dale,
Earl said softly.
Yep. You see two kids standing over there?
Yep. The girl put her hand inside her brother's, and they stared up at Dale. He felt their piercing blue eyes, cold and warm at the same time. It seemed for a moment that they might speak, but then they turned, walked from the room, the girl leading the boy as if they were going to school.
Were they,
Earl stammered.
I mean, was that?
Yeah, Dale said. I think so. Earl sighed, hand still shaking.
Well, I don't mind saying, but my butt just puckered right the hell up. You need a beer?
Like never before. Dale turned to Arab, who still stared down at the carnage. Hey, Arab, you got a back exit? Arab turned around slowly, his face pale, stunned. We are not covered for this. Trust me, you'll be compensated, Dale said. Back exit, you got one? Yes, take the emergency stairs to the right. It takes you to the rear parking. Thank you, Arab, Dale said, pushing Earl to the door. And hey, you and Earl? You sure we're right? Confusion flashed over Arab's face. About? Day spas, Dale said with a smile. They're awful relaxing. I ain't felt this good in a long, long time. Arab raised his hand, looking as if he was going to wave goodbye, but it remained static and seemed as stunned and shell-shocked as the rest of his body. Please, give us a favorable Yelp review. 3 hours, 13 stitches, and a fistful of antibiotics later, Dale sat at a table in the dark corner of a poorly lit bar. It was the kind of place where Johnny Cash could be heard singing on the jukebox about walking the line over the soft clank of a pool stick tapping the cue ball. The waitresses didn't mind customers looking with their eyes, but if they looked with their hands, they'd find a beer stein cracked against their skull, and a shotgun escort from the premises. Small objects, bits of glass, teeth, broke under boots stepping on the floor, discolored in chaotic Rorschach splotches, stains that were not the products of spilled drinks. To Dale, this was a place of comfort, relaxation, a familiar place, and not a man bun in sight. Carrying a full pitcher and 2 shots of whiskey, Earl joined Dale at the table. He slid his friend one of the shot glasses. In unison, the men raised their whiskey.
Kavanaugh's little ones,
Earl said. God rest their souls.
Amen.
The 2 men drank and returned the empties to the table. The shot of whiskey was calming, but Dale's head still spun, trying to reckon all the events that had to happen to put him where he found himself today. Earl had to fall for an animal-loving woman named Candy. Candy with a K. She had to drag him to a fundraising silent auction where they won a gift certificate to a particular day spa with a particular expiration date, causing Earl to bring Dale instead of Candy. Dale stopped short of wondering about all the events that led to Candy being single, a single mom, and unavailable for a free couples session at Serendipity. But he did resolve that if he ever met the someone in charge of arranging all these circumstances, they were definitely going to have words. The TV behind the bar ran continuous coverage of the biggest local news story of the day. The TV was muted, but neither of them needed sound to follow the story. They had heard it several times on the radio over the past few hours. State Senator Frederick H.K. Kavanaugh, while undergoing physical therapy at a spa in Brentwood, was seriously injured when he accidentally fell from a second-story window. A spokesman for Kavanaugh said that since the tragic loss of his 2 children, he had been plagued with chronic dizzy spells. This condition was likely the cause of the accident, which resulted in a broken femur, pelvis, and multiple contusions. Kavanaugh is in serious but stable condition and is expected to make a full recovery. The outpour of well wishes and support have been overwhelming, and Kavanaugh, or the Honorable H.K., as he likes to be called, wanted to credit the skilled and rapid response of the city's emergency services, which, blah, 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 horseshit. Earl turned away from the TV. Guess you were right. Law ain't interested in us. It's a good thing, too. I'm way too pretty to go to jail. Knowing what we know, Dale said, the last place Kavanaugh wants us is in custody. Earl reached for the pitcher with a shaky hand. I got it, Dale said, and began to pour. You all right? Earl put his hand on his beer mug. I will be. When Dale finished pouring, Earl took a long, deep drink and swallowed slow. I never lost control like that before. It scared the hell out of me. He took another drink. It's still scaring me. Dale didn't know how to respond, so he didn't. Earl put his empty mug on the table. Maybe we should head back and try some of that Reiki. Dale filled Earl's mug back up. What the hell for? So they can tune the chakra that will allow my butt to unpucker. Dale took a drink. Well, this ain't the first time you've been violent. I've seen you put down man and beast. So why is it so different? Damn, Dale. You never listen. I'm trying, old man. I wasn't in control. I wasn't behind the wheel. I was nothing but anger and hate. I was like a... Well, it was like I was you for a hot minute. Dale sat back. There's an insult in there somewhere. Probably. Earl took a deep breath. I imagine there's a lot you got to tell me now. Yeah, Dale said. There is, if you still want to hear it. Earl sat still for a beat, then reached into his back pocket. First things first. Earl tossed down the logo he had sketched for Earl and Dale Trucking. It was as round as the Anheuser-Busch cardboard drink coaster he'd sketched it on. Dale picked it up. It was crude, not at all professional. But it did have potential. You still want to partner up? We've been partners for years. It's just time to make it legal. What about your unpuckered butt? You let me worry about that. Dale leaned forward and looked Earl dead in the face. Things are different now. Rules seem to be changing. Maybe there never were any, I don't know. Whatever shred of decency they had, any sense of honor amongst beasts is long gone. And the game's anew. Dale tossed the logo on the table. If you go down this road with me, I can't honestly say where it might lead. He wanted to add, or what you might become. but he kind of felt it was implied. Earl sat back, brought his mug up, put on his serious face, the one he reserved for deep thinking and watching episodes of Jeopardy. After a gulp and a long swallow, Earl's contemplation came to an end.
I can't honestly say I know exactly what you're talking about, but I do know one thing, which is, whatever is down the road, we're better off driving through it together than we are apart.
Dale raised his mug.
Fair enough.
Earl brought his lips up as well.
To Earl and Dale Truckin'.
Dale scoffed. I like Dale and Earl Truckin'.
Nope,
Earl said.
it sounds better alphabetical.
Good God, Dale and Earl is a... Tell you what, why don't we settle this like men?
Suits me fine,
Earl said.
Darts or 9-ball?
9. The two men tossed back their mugs. They drank long and deep and finished the pitcher before either of them said another word about the future. When Dale sensed the time had come to tell Earl things he needed to know, he ordered another pitcher. It arrived with an inch of froth and a weary smile from the waitress. Dale filled their mugs just as Patsy Cline's voice floated over from the jukebox. Earl sat quietly and listened while Dale spoke, and Miss Cline sang about the wisdom of walking after midnight.
This episode of Drew Blood's Dark Tales is brought to you by Factor. Listen, I get it, friends. Everyone starts the year off with those New Year's resolutions. But by the time spring rolls around, you're back to business as usual. It's easy to come up with excuses for why you can't stick to that diet, too. Fortunately for us, though, Factor is even easier. Factor is how I stopped my diet from getting derailed when the going got rough. You get fully prepared meals designed by dietitians and crafted by chefs, and they're ready in 2 minutes flat. They've made sticking to your goals as easy as humanly possible. I'm talking 100 rotating meals, all whole ingredients, full of lean protein, fresh veggies, and healthy fats. No sugar, refined seed oils, or artificial sweeteners. And best of all, no cooking. Shit. It's no wonder that after only 4 weeks, 97% of customers say that Factor helped them live a healthier life. Honestly, I gotta wonder what the other 3% are thinking. Between you and me, I suspect they're working for Big Sugar. These people are not to be trusted. So trust Big Drew instead. Head to factormeals.com/Drew50off and use code Drew50off to get 50% off and free breakfast for a year. Offer only valid for new Factor customers with code and qualifying auto-renewing subscription purchase. Make healthier eating easy with Factor. Hey friends, it's me again. You know what's really easy to do and even easier to forget? Help me out and hit that like button if you're listening on YouTube. If you're listening somewhere else, what the hell? Pop in and give me a thumb. Say hi while you're at it. Helps me a ton with that damn algorithm. And besides, it's always nice to see you there. All right then, let's hop on that crazy train. All aboard! Oh, shit. Welcome back, friend. I see you. Think you can sneak up on old Drew, huh? Well, it's officially spring today here in the Northern Hemisphere. And if that weren't enough, today we celebrate Bibliomania, a special holiday for book lovers everywhere. Yeah, that's right, Chester. It's kinda like Hulkamania. But instead of saying your prayers, eating your vitamins, and banging your daughter's friends, you curl up at home with a good book. Not quite as exciting, but wholesome. Anyway, come on in, friend. Hey, check out simplyscarypodcast.com and become a patron. For $7.99 a month, you can get the entire catalog ad-free and available to download and stream. It's a good way to show your support, and you get a whole lot for it. Also, check out patreon.com/DrewBlood, too, if you get a chance. If you'd like to support me directly, that's a good way to do it. All right, so tonight, friends, we welcome back our good friend and fan favorite, Brian Asbury. Oh, hell yeah! Now, in this latest story of his, we meet a prisoner with a dark past who's about to get a second chance. So, without further delay, from author Brian Asbury, I give you Judgment Night. The Decision. Fluorescent lights reflected off Dennis Prater's glasses as he sat motionless and dressed in his neatly pressed prison greens. This wasn't the first time he had faced a parole board, and he didn't expect much to come from his hearing.
Mr. Prater, please refresh us again on how you've taken accountability for the 2 murders that you committed, and what steps you've taken to change your life.
Dennis paused thoughtfully. He appeared calm and collected as usual. But then again, there wasn't much that would rattle a contract killer, the crime that had landed him behind bars some 26 years earlier. Well, ma'am, to be honest with you, I was a real bastard when I first fell. I was someone that I'd never want to be associated with today. And I feel horrible for what I did. But to answer your question, I guess part of holding yourself accountable is taking a hard look at yourself and becoming self-aware. That's a tool that I learned in the Healthy Habits class that I've chaired for the last 6 years. I am also proud to say that I've been right up free since 2010. It's like I always say, actions speak louder than words. I feel like if I can follow the rules in here, it'll be that much easier for me to follow the rules on the outside if I were given the opportunity again. Dennis then reached down and picked up several wooden knickknacks that he had crafted at his job in the wood shop. He placed them on the table one by one. There was a jewelry box, a hand-painted model ship, a butterfly sculpture, and a miniature log cabin. These are a few pieces that I made at my job in the wood shop. The ship belongs to C.O. Grigo. It's a gift for his father who was in the Navy. I make a lot of stuff for staff. I like to keep busy. And I believe that by making things like this, I can still be productive and give back to society in some way. One of the board members grinned with amusement. Is that a Zumwalt destroyer? Yeah, it sure is, Dennis said pridefully as he turned and looked down at the tiny ship. I was actually stationed on one when I served in the Navy. I could tell by the insignia. Very nice. Thank you, and thank you for your service. Yeah, that one was a bit of a challenge for me. Then again, my eyesight's getting worse all the time. Dennis grabbed a manila envelope that was sitting on the chair next to him. He pulled out several certificates and arranged them neatly on the table. These are some certificates from the classes that I completed this last year. I've taken just about every one that I can get into. And what classes are those? Decision Points and Parents on a Mission, he grinned. I'm still a parent, even if my kids are probably double some of your ages. The presiding officer scribbled some notes, then looked up from his paperwork. Thank you, Mr. Prater, and I do appreciate that you're using your time in here productively. At this time, we're going to pause for a brief deliberation, and then we'll reconvene and deliver a decision. Dennis was then escorted out into the hallway where he took a seat and quietly awaited the board's decision. A short time later, a CO stepped out and escorted him back into the room. After he was seated, the presiding officer spoke up. Thank you for your patience, Mr. Prater. You've been incarcerated for 26 years now. As you know, your sentence is life with the possibility of parole. It's a sentence that's deserving, considering the reprehensible crime that you committed. You've been denied parole 7 times. Now, despite that, you've continued to comply with the rules of the prison. You have programmed in an acceptable manner. At this point, as with all parole hearings, our job is to determine if you've served enough time and if you still pose any kind of threat to society. Taking your record into account, as well as your advanced age and numerous recommendations from staff, we consider you to be at a low risk to reoffend. You've also finally managed to secure housing. Based off all of these factors, our vote is to grant your parole. Good luck to you, Mr. Prater. That will conclude this hearing. Dennis heard the words but still hadn't processed their meaning. A bewildered smile soon formed on his face. "Thank you. Thank you," were the only words he could utter. He got to his feet and began collecting his belongings. As he walked towards the door, he exchanged glances with the parole board members. "Thank you for having mercy on this old man." He made his way through the yard when he approached Tommy White, an older black convict who was working in the flower garden. Tommy paused and turned to him as he shielded his eyes from the afternoon sun. "How'd it go?" "I got it," Dennis replied, still in shock. "You got parole?" "Yeah." Tommy dropped the bucket of weeds that he was holding and smiled with astonishment. He walked over to Dennis and reached to shake his hand. "Did I just hear that right? Holy shit, Dennis, that's great news." "I can still hardly believe it. I'm kinda in shock." "What changed their minds this time?" "I really couldn't tell you. I knew there was always a chance, but you know as well as I do, they don't call this place the Concrete Coffin for nothing. After I drop this stuff off in my room, I'm gonna go talk to my case manager." Dennis was one of Tommy's few friends, so the news came as bittersweet to him. "That gives me hope, man. Hope that maybe one day, that'll be me." Dennis put his hand on Tommy's shoulder and looked him in the eye. "It will. Listen, just don't go saying anything, all right? If anyone asks, I'm gonna tell them I was denied. You know how word spreads in here. No one needs to know shit." Tommy nodded. "Yeah, I won't say a word." A little while later, Dennis waited in line to speak to his case manager. An inmate soon exited her office. Then she looked up from her computer and waved him inside.
"Hey, I just heard the good news. Congratulations,"
she said with a beaming smile as he stepped through the doorway. Dennis laughed. "Well, that makes 2 of us," he said as he shook her hand and took a seat.
"I'm glad you stopped in, because we need to get moving on finalizing your parole plan."
"That's what I wanted to ask you about. It's been a while, but the last time we spoke, it seemed like my housing situation was the one thing that was tripping me up. Where am I paroling to?"
"Well, let me pull up your file and see what I can find out."
His case manager typed at her computer and skimmed over the information. She squinted her eyes.
"Okay, well, it's giving me an address here. 538 Pine Way, Manitou Springs. Let me Google it and see what comes up."
She typed in the address and a small white house situated within the woods pulled up.
"Oh, that's cute,"
she remarked. "Do you care if I look?" Dennis asked.
"Sure."
She turned her screen towards him, and he gazed at it with a puzzled look on his face. "Whose house is that?" His case manager shifted her eyes to her other monitor.
"Let me go to your notes and see what it says."
She clicked a few boxes and began reading the narrative.
Okay, so it says, Mr. Prater was successfully paroled to Manitou Springs after securing housing. His mother, Nancy Prater, deceased, included him as the home successor. He will take possession of the dwelling once the appropriate documentation has been completed. Well, according to this, it looks like your mother willed you her house.
The baffled look on Dennis's face grew in intensity. I didn't even know she passed away, but the last I knew she lived in Fountain.
I remember you telling me that you lost touch with your family shortly after you fell.
Yeah, besides a few random letters here and there, it's been... Dennis thought about it. Close to 20 years or more since I've spoken to any of them.
Well, this just shows you that your mom was obviously thinking of you. Maybe it's time to try and reconnect. Having support from your family's huge, especially when you've been incarcerated for as long as you have.
That evening, as Dennis passed through the chow line, one of the kitchen workers called out to him.
What's up, OG? What'd they say at your hearing?
Dennis just shook his head somberly.
Don't let it get you down. Here.
The man looked around, then shoveled an extra serving of beef stew onto Dennis's tray. Dennis nodded and raised his fist to him as he continued through the line. He took a seat in the corner next to Tommy. That was the table that was reserved for the lifers. Did you talk to your case manager? Tommy asked, making sure to keep his voice low. Yeah. Apparently I inherited my mother's house. That had to be what lit the fire under the board's ass. Oh man, that's amazing. Well, the good news just keeps coming today, don't it? Yeah, maybe some of that good luck will rub off on me. Well, I don't know where that good luck's been for the last 26 years, but if I could give you some, believe me I would. Dennis reached for the pepper and began seasoning his stew. I'm just glad that one bitch wasn't there. Who that? Natalie Bowman. She's the daughter of my victims. She's been there for every one of my hearings except for this one. Guess it helped her sleep better at night, Dennis said contemptuously. If it were up to her, I would have had the death penalty. He smirked and shook his head. I bet she ain't gonna be happy when she hears the news. So, where's his house at? Manitou Springs. Last I knew, Mom lived in Fountain, but she must have moved. I need to see if I still have my brother's number somewhere. He pretty much buried me like everyone else when I got locked up. If I can find it, though, I'm gonna try and call him. As lockdown came, the faint glow of Dennis's clear plastic television lit the inside of his cell. The space, which he had called home for the last 12 years of his stretch, was by design a hollow facsimile, identical to the other 20 or so cells that lined the tier, but he had managed, through his convict ingenuity, to make it as comfortable as possible. His bulletin board provided the decor for his room. While many inmates had pictures of their families pinned on their walls, Dennis had pages torn out of fine woodworking magazine, pictures of tables and chairs, desks and cabinets, along with projects that he had completed over the years. In one of the photos, he's constructing a tiny blue and white caboose for a parade. In another, he's wearing his safety goggles after having just finished a tabletop that would later become the warden's desk. It was a mundane existence by all accounts, but he refused to give up and let his victims win. He was too prideful and stubborn. In his mind, he was doing bad things to bad people, people that somehow deserved their fate. And while many of the prison staff thought of him as harmless and reformed, his good-natured demeanor only acted to mask the shamelessness that still dwelled behind his eyes. He pulled a newspaper clipping from his legal box. The headline read, "Prater found guilty in murder for hire." The article continued. Dennis Prater was found guilty of first-degree murder on Thursday for his involvement in the deaths of a Manitou Springs couple earlier this year. Prater, 49, dressed in a gray suit, showed little emotion after the verdict was read. He will serve life behind bars for the shooting deaths of Jerry Bowman, 43, and his wife, Annette Bowman, 41. He will be eligible for parole in 10 to 20 years. He tossed the article on his bed and continued digging until he finally came across his address book. He skimmed through the pages until his finger stopped at a faded entry. Richard Prater, 1077 Moffett Way, Telluride, Colorado. His number was listed below. Dennis dialed the number on the day hall phone, then plugged his ear as he attempted to drown out the noise from the card table. He anxiously awaited for his brother to answer as he pondered his words. After a few rings, however, the call abruptly disconnected. He sighed, then hung up the phone and ambled towards the cell house office. He peeked his head inside and waved at the CO. "Mr. Carter, how you doing this evening?" CO Carter looked up from his magazine. "Oh, hey, Prater. Hey, I heard you got paroled." Dennis grinned. "I did. Just, keep it on the down low if you can. Too many knuckleheads around here, if you know what I mean." "Oh, yeah, and only getting worse. Where are you paroling to?" "Manitou Springs. My mother left me her house out there." "Oh, wow, good for you. I go up there sometimes. I got a little under 3 years left, then I'll finally be able to retire from this shithole. Maybe I'll see you around and we can catch up on fishing or something." Dennis nodded with a sparkle in his eye. "Well, you deserve it. You folks have a tough job. And I'd take you up on that offer." His smiling gaze then veered towards the stack of magazines that sat next to Carter's lunchbox. "Hey, you wouldn't happen to have any of those magazines that I could look at, would you?" Staff weren't allowed to give or receive anything from inmates, but many made an exception in Dennis's case. Carter set his magazine down, then rifled through his reading material. "Sure. Let's see, I got Guns and Ammo, People, Newsweek, whatever you can spare. Beggars can't be choosers." "Well, if I had to guess, you look like a Guns and Ammo kind of guy," Carter said snarkily. He tossed the magazine onto the desk in front of Dennis. "I appreciate it, mister, and I won't say anything," Dennis said as he grinned and slipped it under his shirt. The transfer. As Dennis's parole date fast approached, he met with his attorney as he reviewed the property transfer deed to his mother's house.
"So, this is arranged as a land trust?"
His attorney whispered to him. "What does that mean?" Dennis replied as he adjusted his glasses.
"Well, it looks like your mother put her home in a trust, and that's why you see the bank's name on here and not hers. Families sometimes do that to make it a smoother process and avoid the closing costs that come with a will."
Dennis smiled affectionately. "That was just like Mom. God bless her."
"Yeah, she obviously did her homework."
After all the legal jargon, Dennis signed the documents. His case manager then notarized the deed, which completed the transfer and officially recognized him as the home's new owner. On the morning of his release, Dennis visited Tommy one last time as he gave away the last of his property to him. Tommy took possession of his coffee maker, desk lamp, stack of tabloid magazines, and clear plastic fan, items that only acted as a bleak reminder of his wasted existence behind these walls. Dennis gave Tommy his address, and after a cup of coffee, their visit ended with a handshake. Both men knowing full well that this would likely be the last time they would ever speak face to face. But in prison, parting ways with friends was just a part of life. After breakfast, Dennis sat cuffed in intake as he anxiously awaited for the DOC bus to arrive. He had traded his prison greens for a fresh set of khaki dress outs, and a change of wardrobe was his first taste of freedom again. Another inmate who was also paroling stepped inside and sat down on the bench across from him. He recognized Dennis and grinned. "You paroling too, OG?" Dennis nodded. "Yep." "You headed to Colorado Springs?" "Manitou." "Cool. I can't wait to get home. It's almost like the bitches can smell prison on you." He chuckled. Got a lot of catching up to do." Dennis looked away dismissively. After a long pause, the young man leaned forward in his seat. So, if you don't mind me asking, is it true about you being a hitman for the mob? 'Cause that shit's dope as fuck. Dennis curled his lip. You can't believe half the shit you hear in prison. You want to know the truth? Yeah. I was a purse snatcher. The kid got a puzzled look on his face. What? Yeah. I robbed little old ladies in grocery store parking lots. Wow. Yeah, that's not what I heard. Dennis smirked. Well, sorry to disappoint you. But despite his sarcasm, the young man knew the truth. Dennis's name was notorious within the prison due to the high-profile nature of his crime. His first victim, Jerry Bowman, was a prominent businessman and a member of the Manitou Springs City Council. When a former business partner was cut out of his company, the man hired Dennis to kill Jerry and his wife Annette. They were both executed, and their bodies were set on fire to try and destroy the evidence. It was a heinous act that still haunted their family. And while this wasn't Dennis's first contract killing, it would be the one that landed him behind bars. The release. Dennis was met at the bus station by his friend and former cellmate, Max Darby. Max was a little more than 10 years his junior and had done time for armed robbery and motor vehicle theft. He lived a few miles outside of Manitou and offered to help Dennis as he got back on his feet.
You look like a fish stepping off that bus,
Max joked as Dennis exited the bus and lugged his duffel bag through the parking lot. I feel like a minnow in a giant pond right about now, Dennis replied as he looked around at the traffic that rushed by on the street. The two shook hands as Max beamed with a congratulatory grin that seemed almost frozen on his face.
You made it, brother. There ain't too many of us old guys left.
Dennis smiled. I'm too damn mean to die. He threw his duffel bag into the back of Max's truck, then hopped inside the cab. My God, how the city's grown.
It's a lot to take in at first, so pace yourself. The world's changed a lot since we first fell. So, where we headed? You hungry?
I thought you'd never ask. Is the old, what the hell was it called? The Hungry Farmer. Is that place still around? Max shook his head.
No, they went out of business years ago. I got another place you might like, though.
A short time later, they pulled into a small diner on the outskirts of the city. Dennis ordered a full stack of buttermilk pancakes, 4 strips of bacon, and scrambled eggs. I've been dreaming about this meal since I first heard I was getting out, he said as he began cutting up his food.
It sure beats chow hall food, that's for sure,
Max said as he took a bite of his breakfast burrito.
So, you're going to be staying at your mom's place, huh?
Yeah, she passed away and signed it over to me. I have no idea how long it's been sitting for, so I'm just hoping that it's in decent condition.
Man, you sure lucked out. The place I'm renting is a 1-bedroom, 1-bath. Runs me $1,400 a month, and that's without utilities. That's your biggest hurdle you just got over.
How's it trying to find work out here?
You're a felon, so it's automatically harder. On the bright side, though, there's a bunch of meth heads and bums out here who don't want to work, so I'm sure you will find something.
After their meal, they stopped at Walmart so Dennis could do some shopping for the week. As they passed by electronics, Max stopped and motioned towards the cell phones.
You're gonna need a phone.
Can't I just get a landline?
I mean, you can, but I don't know how else to break it to you, pal. But no one's used landlines since about 2010. You want to take a look?
Dennis nodded reluctantly. As they browsed at the phones, a young man with curly dark hair stepped behind the counter.
Afternoon, gentlemen. You looking to buy a phone today?
Dennis nodded. Yeah, something like that.
Perfect.
The kid pointed at the display case.
Well, we have a deal on the iPhone 17. It's only $10 a month out the door and $5 a month. We also have the newest Samsung Galaxy that we just got in.
Dennis gazed at him as if he were speaking Swahili.
All right, let me back up for a minute. What phone do you have now?
Well, to be honest, I've been using a prison phone for about the last 25 years, and they don't charge much. Max interjected.
He just wants something simple. Do you guys have flip phones?
As they walked toward the register, Dennis read the back of the box on his new flip phone. He then got in line at the self-checkout and looked around for a cashier.
No, you do it yourself,
Max explained. What do you mean?
You ring yourself up.
Max grabbed the scanner and began scanning Dennis's items. Dennis watched with a baffled look on his face. Well, what's to stop someone from stealing? Max pointed.
They have cameras, but nothing really, I guess. Hell, everyone else does,
he whispered under his breath. Driving to Dennis's house was a journey that took the men several miles off the main highway. They turned down a series of dirt roads and soon pulled up to a quaint white house with green trim. As Dennis exited Max's truck, the slam of his door seemed to echo endlessly through the forest and caused the birds to scatter from the trees.
Well, you definitely have privacy up here,
Max said as he walked around the truck. Dennis's eyes scanned the property. No kidding. Look at this place, he uttered with enchantment. He reached into the back of Max's truck and grabbed his groceries, then climbed the cement steps that led onto the porch. He pulled his key from his pocket and opened the front door as Max followed him into the house, carrying his duffel bag. To Dennis's relief, the furniture was still in place. He walked into the kitchen and set his groceries on the counter, then flipped on the light switch. Well, I got power, he said with a beaming smile. Max looked around as he nodded affirmingly.
This is a pretty nice place.
After Dennis put away the groceries, he handed Max a soda, and the two sat down together in the living room. I still can't believe I'm sitting in my mother's house right now, Dennis said, as he looked up at a cow skull that hung on the wall.
It'll take a while to sink in. Hell, I still wake up sometimes thinking I'm still in prison. All that time behind the walls kinda fucks with you.
Dennis nodded. You know, it does. I still think about how life was before I got locked up. It almost feels like two different worlds. There's this one memory in particular that sticks with me. I must have been in my late 20s. I was married at the time, had kids. It was the day after Christmas, and I had just set up this new toy train for my son, Michael. And we were playing with it, and he was having a good time and all. And I paused for a minute, and remember just marveling at the joy on his face. And I think that was probably the happiest I've ever been. Dennis then paused thoughtfully as his eyes seemed to reveal a hint of humanity in them. I really miss those days sometimes. But then in an instant, the humanity was gone. But you know what? There ain't no changing the past. Those people died 20-some years ago, and keeping me in prison didn't bring any of them back. It may sound kinda cold, but that's how I look at it. Just a big waste of my time. Dennis sat up and slapped his knee. But no more of that. I got a lot of stuff I plan on doing around here. Max smiled and made a toasting motion with his soda before taking a swig.
Amen to that.
After Max left, Dennis sat his duffel bag in the master bedroom as he began unpacking. He gazed at an old brass bed that was butted up against the wall. Its sheets were neatly straightened, and a colorful crocheted blanket was draped over the edge of it. He thought about his mother lying beneath the covers, resting her head on the same pillow that he would now rest his on. It was sobering and surreal, much like everything had been in the last few weeks. a new beginning. This episode of Drew Blood's Dark Tales is brought to you by Factor. Spring is in the air, friends, and that means only one thing. Those skirts are getting skimpy, those shorts are creeping up, and if you're anything like me, it's about time to try on that old two-piece and see if it still fits. Good thing we've been using Factor meals though, right friends? Still fit as a fiddle. Eating a healthy diet used to be tedious, time-consuming, and boring, but Factor has changed the game. You get chef-prepped, dietitian-approved meals you can prepare in a snap. Meals you'll look forward to and never get bored of. They've got 100 rotating weekly meals to keep things fresh. High-protein, calorie-smart, Mediterranean, GLP-1 support, ready-to-eat salads, and even this new Muscle Pro collection for strength and recovery. Factor provides a truly great experience. When you eat a Factor meal, you know you're getting quality ingredients, no refined sugars, no artificial sweeteners, and no refined seed oils. You gotta watch them. Even when you're cooking for yourself these days, it's hard to guarantee all that. And speaking of cooking, who has the time? Me? I've got about 2 minutes, and luckily, that's all it takes. Hell, I had a Tex-Mex chicken bowl for lunch today, and I feel like $1,000,000. You know how you feel after you've had a quote-unquote normal lunch? Like you need to take a nap and have a hard time getting back to work? That's a pretty good indication that health isn't the priority there. With Factor, you know you're getting healthy, nutritious meals, and you can be sure you're not derailing your goals. It's no wonder that after only 4 weeks, 97% of customers say Factor helped them live a healthier life. The difference between eating a standard American diet and good food like Factor is pretty self-evident. You've been thinking about making that change. We all have. So why wait? Head to factormeals.com/Drew50off and use code Drew50off to get 50% off and free breakfast for a year. Offer only valid for new Factor customers with a code and qualifying auto-renewing subscription purchase. Make healthy eating easy with Factor. Thanks for your support, friends, and for supporting our valuable sponsors. The next morning brought with it the promise of a new day. Progress instead of stagnancy. It was still strange to wake up without an overhead announcement, or to defecate without someone standing a few feet away, shaving or brushing their teeth. Dennis fried up some bacon when he heard the slam of a truck door. He figured it was Max, arriving early to get a jump on things, but instead, a man in a checkered lumberjack shirt and vest could be seen walking up the driveway. He climbed the steps onto the porch and knocked on the storm door. Dennis peered at him through the glass. "Can I help you?" A younger, burly-looking man with dark hair and a beard smiled back at him. "Hi, I'm Nolan. I live just down the road and wanted to stop by and introduce myself. I hope I ain't interrupting anything." Dennis cracked open the door. "No, I was just cooking some breakfast." "It's a pleasure to meet you," he said, as he shook Dennis's hand. "We're kind of a small, tight-knit community up here, so we always try to know who our neighbors are." Dennis nodded as a smile formed on his face. "Well, thank you. I'm Dennis, by the way. I'm kind of a hermit, so I can appreciate the peace and quiet." "Well, me too. When you think about all the craziness that goes on in the city, it makes you that much more grateful to be up here. But hey, if you're cooking breakfast, I don't mean to keep you." "Well, I certainly appreciate you stopping by and introducing yourself." "Absolutely, Dennis. And if you ever need anything, me and my wife are just down the way." "You said your name was Nolan?" "Yes, sir." Dennis stuck out his hand. "It's good to meet you, Nolan," he said, with a firm handshake. Dennis spent most of the morning rummaging through the house, hoping to find some family photos or something of value. But strangely, there weren't many personal belongings to be found. He began to wonder if some of his relatives had already cleaned out the house and helped themselves to his mother's possessions. Max pulled up to the house after he got off work later in the afternoon. Dennis had just finished shaving when he heard the sound of his truck horn. He quickly patted his face dry and threw on a shirt.
You ready to get your driver's license so you don't have to keep bugging me for rides?
Max said with a playful grin as they drove to the DMV. The last driving test I had was in, let's see. Dennis did the math in his head. About 1965. Max chuckled.
Holy shit! They had cars back then? Did they give you a handbook or anything to study?
I can drive a car. Christ, it wasn't the Stone Age when I fell. A little over an hour later, Dennis discovered that he overestimated his ability. He also learned that coasting through a yellow light was an automatic fail. He sat next to Max on the ride home as he shook his head in disappointment. Man, I could just kick myself. When I looked up, the light had just turned yellow, and I was already almost through the intersection. What was I supposed to do, stop in the middle of traffic?
You'll have to reschedule. Once in a while, you get those assholes.
Stupid cocksucker cost me $100. That's the state for you, always padding their pockets. Acceptance seemed to finally set in. Oh well, hopefully I get it the next time. Dennis figured he had gone without a license for nearly 30 years, so what was a few more weeks? That evening after dinner, he flipped open his cell phone and tried calling his brother again. The ringtone sounded until he was finally directed to his voicemail. Richard, this is your brother Dennis. You're probably not going to believe this, but I was just paroled. I know it's been a while, but I'd really like to talk to you. He glanced down at a piece of paper that he had scribbled his phone number on and read it off. You're about the only family I have left, so I'd really appreciate it if you could call me. Since Dennis was stuck at home, he decided to venture outside and explore the property. A small detached garage sat adjacent to the house, a few yards up the driveway. He walked up to it and tried the handle, but discovered that it was locked. He then pulled his keys from his pants pocket and let himself in. The inside was as bare as the main house, with a detectable stench of old motor oil that still lingered in the air. He walked up to some wooden shelves that hung on the wall, then took his hand and wiped off a thick layer of dust. He imagined that with a good cleaning, the area could easily be made into a shop that could be used for his woodworking projects. As he exited the garage, Nolan drove by and stopped in the road. Hey, neighbor! He exclaimed. Hey, Dennis replied as he began walking in his direction. I was just checking out the yard. Nolan pointed out his window. Hey, just a heads up. You might want to think about removing that pine tree at some point. It makes me a little nervous with the way it's leaning like that. Dennis turned and looked back at the tree, which appeared dead and slightly teetering towards his house. The last thing you want is a tree crashing through your window. You're probably right, Dennis said as he squinted in the sun. If you ain't busy today, I could give you a hand. Well, I appreciate that, but I don't have any tools on me. I got a chainsaw. Wouldn't take but a few hours. Dennis thought about it for a minute and began nodding. Yeah, I'd take you up on that. Do you have any extra gloves? Actually, I think I do. Nolan glanced at his watch. After I drop my boy off at school, I'll load up my chainsaw and be back to give you a hand. And with a nod, he drove off, as Dennis could be seen waving at him in his rearview mirror. A little over a half hour later, Nolan returned with a gas chainsaw loaded in the back of his truck. Dennis stepped out of his house and walked down the driveway. What can I help you with? Well, it depends. Where are you going to want the wood? Dennis remembered seeing some logs stacked up in the backyard. Around back, there's a pile of logs on the patio we can throw it on. As the men went to work cutting down the tree, conversation naturally ensued. So, where you from? Well, I'm originally from Fountain. Dennis's voice lowered some. I've been kinda down on my luck for a while, so I'm finally just getting back on my feet. I can relate. I was in a pretty bad place before I met my wife, and she helped me turn my life around. But it seems like fate put us both here for a reason. You believe in that type of thing? You know, I always have. And with the way things been working out here lately, it only reinforces that belief.
Dennis paused.
Did you happen to know the woman that used to live in this house?
Nolan grinned thoughtfully as he wiped the sweat from his brow.
I sure did. Seemed like a sweet lady. I think she ended up passing away some time ago. She was my mother. No kidding,
Nolan said as he sat his chainsaw down.
Yeah. When she passed away, she left this place to me, so I'm here now. Well, that's good at staying in the family. Too many times you end up seeing homes get sold and the new owners just let the place go to hell.
He reached for his drink.
It's a damn shame when that happens.
After they finished stacking the last of the logs in the backyard, Dennis stood back with his arms crossed as he gazed at the pile of wood.
Look at all that wood. Maybe I'll make something out of it. You like to build things? I've been a woodworker for almost 20 years now. I've built tables, chairs, mainly furniture, but I also make stuff like model houses and toy cars.
Nolan's eyes widened with intrigue.
Really? Oh, yeah.
Dennis motioned towards the house.
You want to see a few things? Sure, if you don't mind me coming in covered in sawdust. Oh, shit, sawdust don't bother me. Come on.
He laughed as he gestured at Nolan to follow him inside. As they stepped into the spare bedroom, Dennis began displaying several of his creations. He showcased his airplane, toy car, and butterfly sculpture. Finally, he pointed at his model cabin that sat on the floor next to the closet.
This cabin was one of the first models I ever built. It's a 1/10 scale replica of an actual house.
Nolan bent down to get a closer look.
Wow! Does the door open? Oh yeah, it opens.
Nolan opened the tiny door, then closed it. He smiled, and his face lit up with amusement as he stood back up.
I can't imagine the effort that went into making all these things.
He then paused and turned to Dennis as his smile somewhat faded.
You should have built a coffin.
A coffin? Dennis repeated, as the remark caught him somewhat off guard. Nolan chuckled nervously as if almost embarrassed.
I don't know why I said coffin. I guess the hinges on the cabin door reminded me of one or something.
Dennis laughed.
Well, I've never built a coffin before, but I've done plenty of cabinet doors that have hinges on them. You say you do cabinetry?
I've done it all,
except for coffins,
Dennis replied lightheartedly.
Well, now I know who to go to when we update our kitchen,
Nolan said, as he grinned and gently slapped Dennis on the back.
Oh yeah, this old man can still work.
As the week drew to an end, Nolan provided a helping hand on several more occasions. He gave Dennis a ride to the grocery store and helped him with some plumbing issues, which in turn took some of the burden off Max, who worked a 60-hour week. Dennis tried to offer Nolan money, but he would never accept payment, nor had he ever asked for any favors in return. His generosity was admirable, even somewhat perplexing to Dennis, who was still ingrained with a convict mentality, because in prison, everything eventually came at a cost.
Twist of fate.
One evening, just as Dennis was about to doze off on the sofa, his phone rang, jolting him awake. He answered, and his brother's voice came over the other end.
Hi, Dennis. This is Richard. I got your message.
Well, hey, Richard. Thanks for calling me back. There was a distance in Richard's tone.
No problem. It's been a while.
I know it has. It's been too long.
I didn't know if I'd ever live to see this day.
Dennis laughed nervously. I honestly didn't either.
So where are you staying at?
Well, I'm at Mom's house up here in Manitou. I'm sure you probably heard that she left her place to me. That's when I first heard that she passed away, God rest her soul. There was a moment of deafening silence on Richard's end.
You're at Mom's house?
Yeah.
Dennis, Mom passed away close to 15 years ago. We sold her house in Fountain right after she died.
Dennis froze in consternation. Well, that's impossible. I mean, I signed the deed myself a few weeks ago.
Who told you it was her house? Was her name on the paperwork?
Both my case manager and attorney. It was arranged in a trust, though, so I think the bank's name was on there if I remember right. The men continued making small talk and offering updates on each other's lives, but the confusion over whose house Dennis was living in largely overshadowed much of their conversation. I'll try sorting this out tomorrow because something ain't adding up. Maybe I'll try calling the assessor's office and see what they tell me.
Well, yeah, let me know what you find out.
After their conversation ended, Dennis hung up with a disturbed look on his face and far more questions than answers. In the back of his mind, he did think it was somewhat strange for someone like his mother, who was never the outdoor type, to be living alone deep within the woods. The next morning, Dennis called the courthouse and spoke with the county assessor. They explained that because the property was arranged in a land trust, the original owner, or grantor, was private. He could try and request the information, but it was a lengthy process that could take weeks or even months to complete. This is probably going to sound kind of weird, but I don't know for sure whose house I'm living in, Dennis said to Max as they sat together visiting later that afternoon.
What do you mean? I thought it was your mom's place.
I did too, until I spoke with my brother yesterday. He said they sold her house in Fountain like 15 years ago after she passed away, and come to think of it, I don't remember seeing her name anywhere on the deed.
Well, you should be able to search online. Property is a public record.
I think normally they are, but in this case it's a land trust, which is different. I called the assessor's office and requested the information, but they said it could take up to a few months. Max chuckled.
Well, shit, that's a great problem to have. I wish I could have a house fall into my lap like that. It's gotta be just a mix-up or something.
Dennis's brow furrowed as he recollected. I remember Nolan, the guy that lives down the way, telling me that there was a lady that used to live here that passed away recently. He sighed and shook his head. I mean, Christ, I don't know what to believe at this point.
Hold on,
Max said as he pulled his phone out of his pocket.
What was your mom's name?
Nancy Prater. Max searched Nancy Prater Manitou Springs, but no matching result came back.
Nothing out here. You said she used to live in Fountain?
Yeah. Max searched again, only this time he changed the city to Fountain. The first result appeared to be a match.
Well, here's a Nancy Dolores Prater. Is that her?
He said as he handed Dennis his phone. Dennis gazed down at the screen. That's her, he said as he nodded. How do I read the article?
Just tap on it with your finger,
Max instructed. Dennis tapped on the article, which was a link to his mother's obituary. He began reading it. Nancy Dolores Prater, February 18, 1927, April 14, 2011. Nancy Dolores Prater, age 84, passed away peacefully at her residence in Fountain, Colorado on April 14, 2011. The article went on to mention Dennis as her son and included a brief summary of her life. Dennis lowered the phone as the color drained from his face. Retribution. The roar of an engine could be heard off in the distance.
Dennis paused from sweeping out the garage and looked out the door as Nolan turned into his driveway. He quickly rested his broom against the wall, then scampered towards him. "The Farmer's Almanac's calling for an Indian summer, and with the aspen already changing, I believe it." "Oh yeah? How bad are the fires up here?" "We've been lucky as of late. The last one I can recall was the Waldo Canyon fire, but that was before I ever got here." Dennis nodded, and an anxious look soon overtook his face. "Hey, Nolan, how well did you know the woman that used to live here? Did you happen to know her name?" Nolan frowned. "Well, I thought you said she was your mother." "Well, I did, but I got a call a few days ago that made me question some things. My mom's name was Nancy." Nolan snapped his fingers. "That's it. It was Nancy. That jogged my memory when you said her name. I didn't know her all that well. She kinda kept to herself. Waved sometimes when I'd drive by." "About how long ago did she pass away?" Nolan began slowly shaking his head as he appeared to contemplate the question. "Maybe like 6 months ago. Like I said, she seemed like a sweet lady, just kind of a recluse." Dennis nodded vacantly. "Okay. Well, I hope you get it figured out, whatever's going on. I came by to invite you over for dinner tonight if you ain't busy. I've been telling the wife all about you." "Tonight?" "Yeah, she's cooking elk meat stew, and she always ends up making way too much." "What time?" 6 o'clock sound good?" Dennis cracked a smile and nodded. Yeah, 6 o'clock should work." Nolan grinned widely. "I'll pick you up then. You better be hungry." Evening soon rolled in, and twilight took form as the sun settled below the crest of the Rocky Mountains. Dennis saw Nolan's headlights shine through the blinds as he pulled into his driveway. He turned off the TV, then threw on his jacket and brown fedora. "Shit, Dennis, you're a hell of a dresser," Nolan said as Dennis hopped into the passenger side of his truck. "Well, it's not like I have anything else to get dressed up for," Dennis replied as he reached to shake his hand. After traveling down the road for several miles, they finally pulled up to a locked metal farm gate that had a giant longhorn skull attached to the center of it. Nolan got out of his truck, then walked up to the gate and undid the padlock. He swung it open, then got back into his truck and crept through the entrance. He drove a few hundred feet up to a log cabin house that was partially hidden by a dense grove of pine trees. A light from inside the house could be seen gently peeking out from behind the curtains. Adjacent to the house, there was a large detached garage that was also lit up. "Man, this place is really tucked away," Dennis said as he peered out the window. Nolan parked in front of the house, then turned to Dennis with a welcoming grin. "Well, you ready to meet the family?" "Yeah, I'm starting to get a little hungry now, too," Dennis said as he rubbed his stomach. "Elk stew's sounding mighty good right about now." Dennis followed Nolan with a carefree stride as they both made their way toward the house. After they entered, he stopped just inside the doorway. "Just have a seat in the living room and I'll get my wife," Nolan said as he took off down the hall. Dennis nodded graciously, then strolled into the living room and took a seat on the sofa in front of a muted TV. Garth Brooks' The Thunder Rolls could be heard playing quietly on the stereo. He leaned back, then stretched his arms out on the cushions as he made himself comfortable. A few moments later, Nolan walked back into the room. "My wife will be just a minute. Oh, hey, one more thing." Dennis looked up from the TV. Nolan's smile and expression suddenly vanished, and the warmth in his voice turned ice cold. "Take off that stupid fucking hat." Dennis sat up and smiled awkwardly. "Excuse me?" he said, thinking that he may have misunderstood him. Nolan took a few steps closer, then raised his arm in the air, which exposed a crowbar that he had hidden behind his leg. He swung it forcefully, and struck Dennis in the face. Dennis fell onto the cushion next to him. He began groaning and grabbed his jaw, which appeared to be broken. His hat toppled off his head as he slowly raised himself back up in his seat. He turned to Nolan wide-eyed and panicked as blood ran from his mouth.
What the fuck is going on?
Nolan threw down the crowbar, then reached into his shirt pocket and pulled out a set of handcuffs.
What are you doing?
Dennis said, as his eyes locked onto the cuffs. Nolan grabbed him by the wrist, then proceeded to handcuff him as Dennis tried pulling away.
You still remember what those double strands felt like slapping across your wrist?
The louder Nolan got, the more evident his southern drawl became.
You know, I think we may have gotten off on the wrong foot, because neither one of us has been completely honest about our past. But it seems to me we have a lot more in common than you know.
Dennis grimaced as he looked up at Nolan in his seat.
What the hell are you talking about?
He cried out as he fidgeted in his cuffs. Nolan pulled out a folded-up sheet of paper from his back pocket and opened it up. It was his inmate profile from the Georgia State Penitentiary.
Look at that handsome devil,
he said as he gazed at his mugshot photo. He handed it to Dennis.
This was back when I was inmate 22714, property of the state of Georgia. Served 9 years for menacing and assault with a deadly weapon. Guess you could say I have some anger issues.
Dennis handed him back the paper.
Why are you showing me this? And why the hell am I cuffed up?
At that moment, Dustin Bowman, the son of the couple that Dennis had murdered and served his 26-year sentence for, stepped into the room. He gripped a revolver in his hand, and his eyes burned with vengeance. Behind him, his sister Natalie emerged. Dennis snapped his head towards them, and his mouth slowly gaped open in shock. He looked back at Nolan in complete disbelief. Nolan pulled a pistol from the back of his waistband.
Say hello to the family,
he said as he motioned in their direction.
That's my brother-in-law, Dustin, and my wife, Natalie. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you two already know each other.
Dennis couldn't speak. When he tried to mouth words, his lips quivered and froze. Although he had never laid eyes on Dustin, he knew Natalie all too well. She had been to every one of his parole hearings and even petitioned to get his sentence upgraded to death. In the process, she learned as much as she could about him, to the point where inquiry bordered on obsession. She clung to the hope that if she could somehow try and understand the monster that he was, maybe she could achieve some level of closure. But closure never came, and as the years passed, her and Dustin eventually grew disillusioned with the justice system, which they believed had failed their parents. With Dennis now facing the possibility of parole every year, they decided that the only way to get the kind of justice that they desired was to take the law into their own hands. To accomplish this, they knew that somehow they would need to access him. They would then have to isolate him, gain his trust, and then carry out the punishment that they believed was rightfully justified and long overdue. As a last resort, Dustin decided to transfer his home into Dennis's name. He arranged it in a land trust so that he would remain anonymous, while at the same time still in control of the property. He then called the Colorado Board of Parole, pretending to be an attorney, and informed them that Dennis's mother had passed away and left him as the home's beneficiary. It was a desperate act, but they figured it could work, being as Dennis was long estranged from his family. Once he had housing, the last condition of his parole plan had been met, and he would be released exactly where they wanted him, alone and in an unfamiliar place.
I've been waiting to see your face,
Dustin said with a voice that cut like a razor. I wasn't gonna let you get off that easy for what you did. For what you took from us. He motioned at Dennis with his gun. Now I want you to look at my sister. Dennis's eyes remained fixated on Dustin, and his body was paralyzed with fear. Look at her! Dustin shouted as he stepped next to him and placed the barrel of his gun up to his temple. He then grabbed him by the back of his neck and turned his head toward Natalie. I want her to see the fear in your eyes. I want her to see every moment of suffering that you endure before you're put down like an animal. And that's what you are, an animal. He then leaned down, close to Dennis's ear. But you know what? I'm more of an animal. He began to snicker sadistically. See, when you signed that deed, you signed your own death warrant. You didn't parole. You just transferred facilities. Because this right here, this is death row, motherfucker. I'm sorry. What do you want from me? Dennis exclaimed as he choked on his words. Your sorry doesn't mean shit to me. I'm a different person now. Please, you gotta believe me. Get up, Dustin said as he motioned with his gun. Look, it doesn't have to go like this. I really am sorry. If there was some way I could change things... Dustin pistol-whipped Dennis in the face, knocking him back in his seat and breaking his glasses. I still don't think you understand how this works. This is non-negotiable. Now get the fuck up. If you're gonna shoot me, just get it over with. Dennis's frightened voice cracked. Dustin looked over at Nolan and motioned with his head. It's time. Nolan placed his gun back in his waistband, then walked over to Dennis and jerked him out of his seat. No, don't do this! Please! Dennis howled as Nolan dragged him out of the living room. Dead man walking! Nolan shouted as he flung open the front door and forced Dennis outside. As they rounded the back of the house, the high-pitched wail of pinned-up barking dogs startled Dennis, who staggered through the darkness. They made their way towards the detached garage and stopped in front of the door. Dustin punched in the security code on the keypad, and the garage door began inching its way up its track. When the inside finally came into view, there was an object that immediately caught Dennis's attention. In the corner of the garage, amongst all the tools and power equipment, sat a sturdy wooden chair. It was bolted to the floor and fitted with nylon straps and a metal skull cap that was attached to the backrest. Its design made it both ominous as well as unmistakable. It was a makeshift electric chair that the men had built together using their knowledge of thermodynamics. A chill ran down Dennis's spine as he struggled to grasp what he was observing. He dropped to his knees and cried out for mercy. No, please don't do this. I'm sorry for what I've done. If I could somehow bring your parents back, I would. Shut the fuck up, Dustin snarled as he holstered his gun. You're sorry you got caught. That's what you're sorry for. See, now we can finally cut through all the bullshit. And there ain't no lawyer or appeal that can save you now. Oh my God. Oh my God! Well, I'm glad you finally found Jesus, because you're gonna answer to him next. Now get the fuck up! Dustin barked as he bent over and slugged Dennis in the gut. Nolan pulled Dennis back to his feet, and the two men dragged him the rest of the way, then dumped him in the chair. Nolan held him down by his throat as Dustin went to work securing the straps around his body. Once they were in place, he walked over to a nearby shelf and grabbed a set of clippers. He then steadied Dennis's head and began shaving off his hair. After his scalp was exposed, he wiped off the excess clippings, then placed a metal skull cap on his head and fastened a chin strap. When Nolan finally released his grip, Dennis began coughing.
Please don't!
He pleaded, in between gasping for air. Dustin unrolled a strip of duct tape and placed it over his mouth. He then turned towards Nolan and Natalie.
Okay, now the condemned has been prepped and restrained, we can begin.
He motioned towards Nolan.
Start hooking up the cables.
Nolan walked over to Natalie's car, which was backed up into the garage, and popped open the trunk. Inside was a set of rolled-up jumper cables. He began unrolling the cables as Dustin turned back to Dennis, who watched in horror, his muffled cries reverberating throughout the inside.
Dennis Prater, I sentence you to death by way of electrocution for taking the lives of Jerry and Annette Bowman.
As Dustin kept speaking, Nolan pried open the compartment that led to the car's hybrid battery. He then attached the jumper cables to its terminals.
You so senselessly robbed two beautiful souls of the life they had left. You stripped us of a mother and father, and our children of their grandparents. The pain you caused our family was immeasurable.
He then turned toward Natalie.
Go ahead.
Natalie uncrossed her arms and stepped forward. She sniveled with tears in her eyes.
You know, I used to try and understand you. I wanted to understand how a person could be so cruel and inhuman. But then I finally realized there's no comprehending what you did. You will never know the damage you caused. You didn't give a fuck, so neither do I. So fuck you,
Natalie exclaimed as she flipped off Dennis and spit on him.
Okay. Well then, if no one has anything else to add, we can continue with the execution. Dennis Prater, at this time 400 volts of electricity will pass through your body, scrambling your brain and stopping your heart. This execution will begin at 6:40 p.m., and will continue until we are sure, goddamn sure, that you are no longer breathing. Afterwards, your body will be burned in much the same way that our parents were.
The clock on the wall displayed 6:39 p.m.
Did you have any final words?
Dennis's muffled screams increased in intensity as he jerked around in his seat.
Sorry, I didn't quite catch that. Did you, Nolan?
Dustin replied sarcastically as he looked over at Nolan, who shook his head. The clock then struck 6:40 p.m., triggering the moment of reckoning.
All right, start the car.
Nolan got into the car and started the engine. Dustin walked over to the car and removed the jumper cables from its trunk. He then lurched in Dennis's direction, taunting him by tapping their ends together, which caused them to spark. He stepped behind him, then locked eyes with Natalie. After a deep breath, he connected the clamps to the power terminals on the chair. There was a powerful clack as Dennis took the full force of 400 volts to the body. Nolan revved the engine, causing the car's dash to flicker as every last bit of electrical current was sent surging through Dennis's brain. Sparks sprayed from under his skull cap, and he groaned as his body spasmed uncontrollably. His fingernails dug into the wooden armrests, and blood began to trickle down the corner of his mouth. Natalie had to turn away. Dustin just watched, stony-eyed and seemingly numb to what he was witnessing. As the horror show continued, Dennis's eyeballs burst in their sockets, and smoke began billowing from his ears. Dustin finally reached down and disconnected the clamps as he choked on the fumes. Nolan then turned off the car and exited the vehicle. There was an eerie stillness as Dennis was left slumped over and smoldering in his seat. The sickening stench of his burnt flesh hung thick in the air. Dustin stepped in front of him and pulled out his gun. He poked him in the chest with the barrel, but Dennis didn't move. He then reached to check for a pulse, unaware that his skin was searing hot.
Ah!
Dustin exclaimed as he jerked his hand away. He turned toward Nolan.
I don't know about you, but I think that boy's definitely well done.
After Dennis's body finally cooled to the touch, Dustin undid his chin strap, then proceeded to remove the skull cap from his head. Nolan watched with morbid curiosity as Dustin slowly peeled it off. The top of Dennis's head was completely evaporated, leaving his skull bone exposed in a circle shape. The skin around it had melted and ran down his head like hot wax. Dustin looked up at Nolan and smiled darkly.
You know what they always say? If you want a job done right, sometimes you gotta do it yourself.
Nolan nodded.
You're right about that.
Natalie came up from behind, covering her mouth.
Is he dead?
Well, if he ain't dead yet, he will be.
He then turned to Nolan.
Let's wrap him up and get him out of here.
Nolan grabbed a blanket that the men had planned to wrap Dennis in. They placed it on the ground in front of the chair, then Dustin went to work undoing the straps around his body. As Dennis fell forward, Nolan guided him out of the seat and onto the blanket. He laid there motionless, although they couldn't tell for sure if he was dead or just unconscious. After wrapping him in the blanket, they loaded his body into the back of Nolan's truck. Dustin then grabbed a gas can and they sped out of the driveway. They drove down a narrow back road as they ventured further onto the property. After finally coming upon a clearing, Nolan pulled over and parked. Dustin got out and dropped the tailgate. Then both men pulled Dennis's body from the bed of the truck. They hauled him through the woods as Natalie followed closely behind, carrying the gas can. She gazed up at the night sky, wondering if her parents were watching over them. They soon came upon a shallow grave and tossed Dennis's body into the hole. Dustin took the gas can and began pouring its contents into the opening. He then glanced over at Natalie as he pulled a box of matches from his pocket and handed them to her. As she reached for a match, a Bible verse repeated in her mind. For nothing is hidden that will not be revealed, nor anything secret that will not be made known and come to light. She struck the match, then tossed it in the hole. Dustin put his arm around her as they watched a sea of flames begin devouring Dennis's body. They had both vowed to bring their parents' killer to justice, and tonight, justice had finally come to pass.
He's in hell now,
Dennis said as he clutched his sister.
Remember this night, Judgment Night.
And that was Judgment Night by author Brian Asbury. A good reminder that everyone deserves a second chance. Of course, that doesn't always mean you're going to get one. Hey, a little bit about that wild man. Old Brian Asbury is originally from Pueblo, Colorado. He's a big fan of television shows like Tales from the Crypt and Twilight Zone, and gritty 90s psychological thrillers like Cape Fear and Unlawful Entry. He's a regular contributor, and if you've enjoyed this story, you can check out many of his other ones available on the channel. His collection Waking the Dead and numerous other short stories are available on Amazon. Just type in Brian Asbury and you'll see them all, including Greetings from Asbury Park by Bruce Springsteen. Now, ignore Bruce Springsteen, 'cause he sucks, and pick up some books from a real artist, Brian Asbury. Fans can connect with him on Facebook under Brian Asbury-Writer. He'd like to thank his lovely wife Amber, who has been one of his biggest inspirations, and also his family and friends. You know who you are. And be sure to check out his fancy website at brianasbury.com.
Oye, Brian, mucho gracias, amigo.
And do old Drew Blood a favor, would you? Subscribe to his podcast wherever you do your listening and leave him a 5-star review and a kind word, even if you're listening on YouTube. He needs soldiers on all fronts to win this battle, and he appreciates it. To hear a premium ad-free edition of tonight's and all the other episodes, visit simplyscarypodcast.com today and click Patrons in the upper menu. You'll find yourself at chillingtalesfordarknights.com, where you can become a patron for as little as $5 per month and get access to their entire audio archive, all ad-free and available to download or stream. Thank you for your time and for supporting our sponsors. When you support our sponsors, you support this show. If you happen to use Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, or YouTube, you can follow and subscribe to Chillin' Tales for Dark Nights there, where you'll get all the latest updates and new releases and have the chance to interact with them each and every week. Oh, and you can find Drew Blood on Facebook and Instagram, and sometimes Twitter. The Drew Blood's Dark Tales podcast is accepting submissions, friend. If you've got a story or two you'd like to be featured on the show, send it to drewbloodhorror@gmail.com. If selected, you'll get the full treatment, 10 bananas.
Well, I guess this is where we part ways, at least till next week. So grab a drink for the road, friend. And if you miss me out there, don't forget about patreon.com/DrewBlood. You can hear hours and hours of me, Paul J. McSorley, and Jeff Sturdivant busting each other's balls. It's a pretty good time. Meanwhile, may the wind be at your back, and may the road rise up to meet you. And until we meet again, y'all, go fuck yourselves.